We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the doing. Do you understand that?
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions.
Stay vigilant. Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Thursday, August 6th, 2026. Thank you for joining me today. You know, I thought I'd start with something a little bit funny today just because it kind of takes the edge off all the seriousness that's going on, you know, and it's kind of interesting. Another point, by the way, to reiterate that probably in the next couple of days, we'll be putting out officially the AI transparency pledge that Derek and Whitney and myself put together. And it's, again, I want to stress that it's really going to be about, if people want to outline to what level, if at all, you're using AI in your content. Not so much as like a all or nothing kind of a thing. But I mentioned the other day, and so I got some comments, and I wanted to put that back out there. You know, and so like I said, I'm not going to be using AI for my pictures anymore, for any content creation, anything for the website. But there are people using it. I just thought that was humorous. But the same light, realize how much that is going to change the field. And there are going to be people that are going to be using it to different variations. And that's, it's going to be a choice for everybody. Some people will think it's okay. Some people will find a middle ground. And that's going to be for them to decide. This isn't going to be about criticizing others outside of using it to create content. I find that to be sort of at least counterintuitive when it comes to what we do, especially from a creative side. But just wanted to announce that again based on that opening video. But we have a lot to talk about today, a bunch that I want to get to that I think is very relevant. I want to start a little bit on just some opening points that relate to sort of the new party direction, but two-party illusion, some of the stuff I like to point out to begin with. And one interesting point that has to do with Glenn Beck, talking about something that I find so fascinating that we've been highlighting, that we've gotten pushback from everybody on their side of the conversation and plenty of others around the idea that we're watching sort of and I mean, not just recently with the Strait of Hormuz, but since the beginning of this administration, the continuation of the Great Reset, or Trump, reimagining the way the world operates, or rebuilding the global dynamic. And I find it really interesting, not even to say that that is what I truly think is what's happening in regard to Trump. In a global sense, absolutely. But I want to talk about how he's framing this now as exactly, frankly, I think it's sort of a reactionary thing to make it art, like Trump saying the global energy thing was why he was doing that, or they floated it through the conversation. And I don't think that's what his plan was, or even in his wheelhouse. I think it was used to make it look like he was doing something that made sense of all of this. But I want to make a point on the way Glenn is now shifting into that direction. I want to talk about some connections with that surveillance, ICE, flock, and an interesting, the connection to Carbine that we've talked about. But an interesting point that I want to make yet again today, as it is relevant to all the way it connects. I want to touch on Fauci, and the contempt, congressional contempt, that I think is just complete theater. Fauci deserves to be in prison. And the fifth doesn't always mean someone's guilty, but in this case, I think it clearly does. And I think, in my opinion, it's something that was coordinated. Just my guess. But overall, I want to talk about what I think is going to happen with that, and how I think it's very clearly, deliberate theater. I think people involved, including people like Rand Paul, know this is going nowhere, and know better than to think that they can hold him in contempt for the Fifth Amendment. And specifically with this context. And this should not be taken as defending Fauci. I 100% agree that he should be held accountable, should be going to prison for what he's responsible for. Same with the Biden, Trump, all of them. But I want to go into why I think that's going to be a nothing burger, if you will. The new mRNA flu shot that we've talked about twice already. mRNA 1010. We talked about this, I think, about 6 months ago or 8 months ago, then again 5 months ago. I mean, as it was going forward, and the typical pushback from people that said, no, that's a bunch of Democrat holdovers. No, those are just FDA advisors. Fair points. But ultimately, here we are. And why that's what we expected, but shocking for some, which I'm not sure why. And an interesting follow-up to the whole phage bacteria system or bacteriophage system, different way to say the same thing that we talked about in the context of gain of function. Now, even in the title today, I want to preface right out of the gate that I'm still not suggesting that it is the same thing as gain of function. What I want to talk about, I'm going to bring it up again today in the latter half of the show because of something that just came out from BBC. Weird timing. We were ahead of this story as well. Just interestingly coming across our desk and then having this become some news story today where suddenly this big story is out where they've successfully made all of these bacteria infecting viruses that are completely safe to humans, which I disagree with. And there's science that shows otherwise. But I want to go through that in a connection with not just that we already highlighted it, but another piece that I found that even connects it directly to the use of gain of function studies. Now, last we went over it, there was multiple studies that I found that suggested that these things can be used in similar ways. Not to say that they're as dangerous as the typical gain of function, but that it really, as I see it, is a similar experimental direction that is rife with possible negative outcome that we wouldn't expect. And in very similar ways, I would argue. But I made sure that it wasn't as, all encompassing as that because I don't think it's the same, but it's important to talk about. Because what else are they doing out there? And does this open the door to the same direction? And quite frankly, they didn't even stop gain of function, as I hope you just saw our last show and many before that, which made that clear, despite RFK Jr. pushing into that. Now, we're also going to talk about Iran. Honestly, if we don't have time, that'll be the first thing to get pushed off because, spoiler alert, we were correct about what we said last time. Trump's not involved in this negotiation. Iran and Oman are getting close to announcing, if not already, what they're going to do. And Trump is like, there's a thing going on and we're involved, and everyone's sort of laughing at him. Now, of course, I could be wrong. Everybody could be wrong. And there could be some secret that comes out down the line. But based on the evidence and everything thus far, he's just spinning out. And it's really hard to watch. But we'll touch on that at the end today. But of course, we'll shout out to the person who made this clip. We started with this. It was on the opening thing as well. Mad Devil Dog. It is his name on there too, unless he just put it on there after he found it, which does happen on this platform. But it's just ridiculous looking. And there's something about these things that I just enjoy because these people take themselves so seriously, and they're really not as grand and smart, and they're really not even close to everything they try to frame themselves as. And that's not because they're all necessarily, incompetent, but because they all have such a bombastic way that they present themselves and how they frame themselves. And just to laugh at the stupidity of these kind of things. It's just, and honestly, I'll start with this is why I even included this. I just thought it was kind of interesting because I was looking at this right before that. And I don't even know if that's where this came from, but I'm looking at his hair in this clip and I'm like, does his hair look different? Not that I would have even brought this up if it wasn't for that clip going around and also the context of this tweet. But I'm just like, his hair looks different. It looks fluffy. And at first I was like, is this not like kind of in the same vein of just interesting thought? Like everyone would jump at any difference of Biden and say, it's a double, it's a lookalike. And truthfully, if you look through history, they all have something like that. Not to say that it's utilized in front of you on social media. I don't know if we've ever proven that. But it's true that it's possible. That's not what I'm even saying. I just thought that was funny. And I'm thinking, oh, look, are they going to jump at that the same way and say, that's a different Trump? It's not the same guy. That's why he's failing. Who knows? I'm sure somebody will. But that's the only reason, because I thought that was funny. And I'm like, oh, man, somebody definitely picked up on that. Who knows? I could be wrong. Now, jokes aside, since I started with this clip before I get into some other opening points, this is Donald Trump talking about, actually, I think I have the clip here. Again, I believe, I don't even want to comment on it today, but weirdly enough, some of the issues we've been having today, I have a much larger show today, and I don't know really what changed. Nothing on my end outside of the small things I've been doing around this. Zero issue today. More stuff popping up, more content. Even the memory seems higher, but not a blip. Who knows why? To me, that says something. I mean, there's no consistency with that. And so that would either mean the platform, the providers, or something else in particular. I hope we don't continue to have those same problems, but since I bring it up, I'll just point that out. But the reason I say that now is if I have issue with these videos throughout, like I've been saying the last few days, please let me know, like real time, because I'll simply just stop the video and just explain it and move forward. But I don't believe we're going to have any issue today. I'm not really sure what the difference is, but I'm going to play this clip first, and then we'll read what Drop Site News wrote. And it's just about Venezuela. I mean, the question is this what you see? Well, two questions, really. Is this what you see this country as? Rather more so you and the people, not the government, but is this what you see as what we represent? as the people of this country and what they want to project to the world that we are as a country. And secondarily, even if you don't care about that, what Trump is saying here is simply not consistent with even what he presents as what he presents this country as. Freedom and liberty and doing the right thing. And so even if you don't care, realize that he has to lie about that as he stands up here and just goes, to the victor go the spoils. That's not a sentiment that is consistent with liberty and freedom and democracy and whatever the things he wants, all of our government like to project, whether you like those things or not. It's not, guys. To the victor go the spoils. That's take what you want with power, right? That is archaic, old school power, all or nothing, military might. That's what they're doing. And maybe you agree with that. That's what they're trying to drive into your normal mindset, is that is okay. That's where we are. Steve Miller said, oh, that's what we've always been. It's not, guys. That's what they've always been. But the world has struggled with trying to get away from a time where the powerful can just do what they want to the weak. Maybe that's the way it'll always be. But I'd like to believe we can fight for something better. And I believe we've, flirted with that over different centuries of people realizing what powerful people are doing. But to the victor go the spoils is not what he pretends we are as a country. So I think that's relevant.
Taking a lot of oil from Venezuela, and we're getting along great with them. Billions and billions.
Oh, and they're not, by the way. Venezuelan people hate this because they're getting nothing from it. They're not stupid, and everybody sees how this is going. If we see it, they see it, guys. So they're not doing well. In his mind, what's well is the oligarchs with his oligarchs. That's all he thinks about. When we're all doing great, the stock market's great, and everything's great, he's talking about his circles, not you. And every American seems to be coming to terms with this. I'll point that out in a second.
The barrels of oil is coming out of Venezuela. It's one of the most fertile places for oil in the world. And as you know, it was a 48-minute war, lasted 40.
It wasn't a war. It was a regime change operation. Essentially, it was really more of a military intelligence operation. And yes, successful in the sense of them illegally taking control of the country. Is that successful in the minds of what Americans want? I mean, I would argue that most conservatives ultimately, not the team sport, blind, whatever Trump says, rah people, but the ones that actually believe in what he was originally promising, clearly did not want blunt force, take what you want, we're in power. That's not what they presented them wanting. Maybe they did secretly, but then even they have an issue with coming to terms with what they really want versus what they project. That matters.
And we paid for the war with what we've taken out many times. Where have you heard?
No, I haven't actually. You know why? Because only a fraction of that money has actually been verified. Of course, it could be secretly being done, but is that helping you or America? No, that money is being dumped into the market to try to offset the absolute failure of what they're doing. Everyone can see that. And the reality is, even if they haven't, that money has not made its way into helping Americans in any way, shape, or form.
That before. You haven't heard that before. It's the old-fashioned way, right? It's the old-fashioned way.
Old-fashioned, which means no moral guidance. Just we're going to go in and take what we want because we won. So fine, that just really take what he's trying to do right there, guys, that they're okay. So, okay, here's the best way to frame that. By that logic, if for whatever reason another country just became powerful enough, and guess what, guys, there are some that you might not understand are capable of that today, and just said, you know what, we're going to take Florida because we can. What would you do? Well, that's just the way it works, right? That's the way the things operate. Stephen Miller says that's just the way the world works. And maybe you think it is, but then you cannot be, you can't stand up and then go law, and that's ours, and that's sovereignty, because those things don't mean anything when you believe what Trump believes right there.
To the victor belong the spoils, right?
Belong the spoils. He can't even use old adages without hubris. I just find that humorous.
And we're doing the same thing, by the way, in the lovely Islamic Republic of Iran. We're knocking the hell out of it.
What's funny is the lovely Islamic, it's just, I don't think this guy barely understands half the stuff he gets into. He's just kind of going off talking points and repeating things because that statement doesn't make sense with what everybody, anyway, the bottom line is that we're going to come back to this opening quick point because of the hair thing, to be honest, but I just think it's very clear what they are projecting as what we are and that's not the case. I don't believe most Americans want this. That's why most Americans vote no, or rather, polling whatever, to war. If most Americans wanted to the victor go the spoils, and by the way, you are not the victor, you don't get the spoils, the oligarchs do, you get nothing and you get hated for it. The point is that if that's what most people wanted, they would vote yes for more war, wouldn't they, guys? It's not what Americans want. Not Republicans, not Democrats, not people who are aware how stupid it all is. Nobody, guys, not the majority at the very least. President Donald Trump has said to the victor belong the spoils to justify the United States seizure and control of Venezuelan oil. He boasted that the initial conflict lasted 48 minutes and that the U.S. has already recouped the war expenses. The U.S. government has seized and generated more than $13 billion from the sale of Venezuelan crude since taking control of the country's exports. Only about $300 million has been officially and publicly traced. Now, everyone around Trump is going to go, do you know where it's gone? Are you in Trump's inner circle? Then shut up. You don't know. That's the kind of thing you get today. Hashtag democracy. The point is, that's not how that's supposed to work. So you're asking us to blindly assume that people in power are just doing the right thing with billions of dollars that we can't prove? Nobody agrees with that, guys. So that's what this game they push about how you're just supposed to blindly trust the team. That's not what anybody really thinks. Not even most of the team. You can literally see this if you back away from the current moment. The funds are being kept in a dedicated U.S. Treasury account. According to the statements made by Rubio, the money moves through a Citibank account, perfect, and audited by the accounting firm KPMG. Congressional Democrats, led by House Oversight Committee ranking member Robert Garcia, escalated the investigation into the administration. But they don't care, guys. It's about trying to make them look bad. If I'd like to be wrong, whether it's left or right, to just see criminals go to jail, but realize that ultimately, when has anybody ever actually ended up in jail? Is that not the simplest thing to look at? Because all this stuff flies around and ultimately, not even Fauci, which we'll get to in a minute. That's what I believe. But anyway, okay. So one quick point I want to start with. Somebody reached out to me, and I've been keeping up on this because of some weird changes and stuff, censorship that's been happening on BitChute, comments being censored underneath the podcast that I was kicked out of for ideas that the host and now financial backer of BitChute didn't like that I was saying. It just speaks poorly for where this is going. And I still support what their original mission anyway. But now somebody reached out to me and said, hey, BitChute just canceled a bunch of your subscribers. Looks like it may be permanent too. Not sure. So I'll point it out. Frustrating, isn't it? Now, I wasn't able to get an archive of anything reasonable new, and I think that may be somewhat relevant. But ultimately, the last one I was able to get is 2024. Showing 37,280. That's 2024. As it currently stands, it's at 38.7. It was higher than that. I'm just not able to get, if you can find an archive, send it to me. But that's frustrating, guys. Who knows? It could be one person back there who seems to hate me for very personal reasons as they talk about Zionism and globalism on a show that's about what's going on in the world with Bruce Fein and Dennis Kucinich, and ultimately I get hated off the show by one person because those ideas apparently rubbed in the wrong way. I don't know, but it's frustrating. I'm not going to say that I know that. All I'm pointing out is that this is something that happened and somebody's pointing it out to me, and that over there happened as well. Now, if they're connected, who knows? But it's frustrating because it was one of the platforms, and it still is, hopefully, that it really fights for the mission of free speech, even to the detriment of the platform. And yet you get somebody who comes in with a mainstream business type mindset and takes it in a direction so far that's going wrong. Even the idea of, I was told they were leaning away from the streaming direction. I mean, the whole thing just bothers me. You know why, honestly? Like just as a personal moment, because I was involved with the Super U platform and not like a financial side, just as an advisor, because I believe in the person that was doing it and what they were trying to accomplish. And ultimately it just got thrown away because the person died very mysteriously. And ultimately the family just decided to wrap the whole thing and just sell it for its parts. When in fact, the thing would have been profitable to sell as a whole. I just feel the whole thing went super weird. It was Jimmy Dore and the Duran and myself and plenty of others that had pretty good reach. And that platform was building. And then he died, and it just makes me sad. Anyway, that's why things like this get to me because it's hard to, and honestly, this is why I have a hard time, and I probably never will find, believe in a politician because things like this continue to happen and it makes you jaded. Historically, though, it seems like an accurate stance to take when it comes to platforms or anything else. But continuing, start with the point from Massey here, where he says, Trump expands, this is some two-party illusion stuff that I want to include, Trump expands his base by welcoming Epstein's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, but that's not new. Alan Dershowitz has been a part of Trump's team forever. So I just think it's funny that it's like, I'm getting a lot of weirdness right now from Massey, from Tucker, and not necessarily dishonesty, but do you not notice? Let me ask this. Do you notice a shift in the way the content's coming out now that they're like America, what do they call it? America First Party? I have. And I've noticed like a weird, like Rand Paul and, comes out and goes, Bill Gates has never been held accountable. And it's like, well, okay, good. I agree. But what's this kind of, they feel like our congressmen are now acting like the red light, holy crap guys with the way that their content's coming out. because it's a lot of like that and outrage and but no follow through, no action. Yes, Bill Gates, sort of like we just saw Tucker point out, is unhappy and that's enough. And Fauci's probably very unhappy and that's accountability. It's like, that's not true. And Gates is not, clearly he's been benefiting wildly from Trump. This administration more than ever. Multiple meetings. He's got, I did the whole thing last time. He's very clearly in the inner circle. He's benefiting wildly from his connections. So it just feels like a weird choice. Anyway, back to this. Alan Dershowitz into MAGA, which really, as you know, is the Trump side of this that I don't think is even close to what the MAGA momentum was about. Those are people that now see that Trump lied to him. Either way, the idea is, Alan Dershowitz, Zionist, bad. I agree, but I'm very on guard to where this next thing goes. Now, here's Luke Rudowski saying, what do you think about Tucker Carlson's 10-point plan? Very insightful work. And the bottom line is a screenshot from Tucker that lists off the things that he's saying. Okay. This is the whole podcast, by the way. The Patriotic Blonde simply says based. And I said, consider the possibility, because she's the one that was supporting Trump and ultimately, called him out after he double-crossed everybody. And I said, consider the possibility that he is playing you just as Trump did. I truly hope he's genuine, but at least consider that he's only promising what we want to hear in order to gain support for the next political team that doesn't care about American interests. Now, I'm not even saying that's what I think is most likely, but certainly something we could consider as a lot of people just went through a process of going, Trump promised all these great things and we believe and it's going to happen. And then he didn't follow through, sort of like every politician in my entire life. Who knows why this took this one to wake certain people up? But either way, I think that's interesting. So back to this, Tucker's putting out things like this that say fair. Same rule should apply to presidents, federal agents, people like Jefferson. Yeah, who's going to disagree with that? Now, I'm not, again, maybe if he believes this, that's fantastic, guys. But why would it be like, oh, look, the good things, democracy, freedom, and free speech? Great. Now, we shouldn't believe a single word people say until we see action that backs it up, especially today. But I feel like this is starting all over again. Sovereign. Carlson claimed Israel pushes the U.S. into Iran war through bribery and threat. It's real easy to call these things out now that everybody sees them and now that everybody's looking, but will that happen? Productive. America should rebuild farming, manufacture, craftsmen. Well, Trump said basically all of this. Beautiful. Carlson alleged the urban planners deliberately uglified American cities and portrayed brutalist art. These are all, some of these seem specific too. It's like this. I don't even want to go through all this because frankly, we'll wait and see when he actually does anything. Even when he's running, if that happens, this will mean nothing to me until he does something. Sure, promises matter because of course, if you guys think voting still has an outcome, that's, I'm not even getting into this right now because we're so far from anything actually happening with this. But half these people that are promoting it are ones that would have called out how the voting system is broken or voting machines are probably, but now we're like, yay, vote for the next team. But anyway, you can clearly tell that I'm jaded with the system. I'm not saying we shouldn't care, but realize that going through the motions is not the answer. It's a hamster wheel. It's a system that is broken. And the only way to win a broken game is to not play. Or rather, the only way to not lose a rigged game is to not play. Healthy. Carlson embraced RFK Jr.'s food agenda, called for universal sobriety, and said the widespread use of drugs such as Xanax, Adderall, SRIs have left Americans half-addled. Now, called for universal sobriety. Does that mean he's going to say you're not allowed to take any drugs? Well, which would be an infringement on your freedom, right? And currently in this country, there's all sorts of laws against that. But what are we talking about when it comes to actual freedom? Or let's be real, all of these other things are things people can prescribe. But again, I shouldn't even go into each one of these. I don't believe that most of this will be what actually comes to pass. Government officials should be punished for lying to citizens. Yes, great, do that. Optimistic. Carlson argued that having children is a biological imperative and the foundation of long-term thinking, while blaming aging and childless elites for Paul. So now, that's very personal. Now that's an opinion that we think that people should have children, but that's not something, that's like running on, we should believe in one side argument, that this is what the Christian right thinks. It's just weird, right? Like that's not something that's going to align with people in the country as a whole that you have to choose. It should be about, you have the right to choose what you want. That would be the right way to put that. But I'm not saying this is his running campaign. It's just what he's putting out as things that need to change. So that's why I'm not trying to make this about breaking it down for his next campaign. But I guess, like I said, I shouldn't even be going through each one. It's about the idea that you're putting out things that people think and probably believe in. Like it's like, okay, it's like doing this when Trump came out with his plan and going, oh my God, what do you think? Trump's the best. Now look at where we are. What meaningful matter did that have? What effect did it have on anything? What did it mean to do that back then? What does it mean to do this right now? My answer, nothing, literally nothing. But that's where it's going. So here's Trump, and there's points that will relate back to that as we go through today. But here's Trump. As I argue right now, Trump is probably one of the most universally disliked people. Like, that's true, guys. Oh, nice. So the homeless left just came in. I didn't know what this even was until yesterday on Rumble, by the way. Steve Turdo, a few days ago, Steve told me. So thank you for bringing over your audience. That's awesome. But the point here, guys, is that I honestly am starting to wonder whether I even need to continue highlighting the dishonesty of Trump or some need to see it. So I probably still will. Like, there's even the one person out there that's still being misled. But it's like, am I wasting my time? Are we all just like, yes, Trump's ridiculous. And it's like people who disagree that Biden was senile. There's some, they existed, and they probably still lie to themselves, but the vast majority, including left, because we all saw after the fact when they were forced to admit it, knew that. So am I wasting time? I don't know. But some of these points still seem relevant in a larger sense. So really quickly, I'll just read this. Mario Propaganda here says, Trump just unloaded on new Democrat Senate candidate, Abdul al-Said. Which, by the way, it's not a difficult name so these people are acting like it's some kind of a weird, they're just playing into the division tactics of the race to make you whatever his name is. It's like, that's very stupid and petty. Like, whether you hate Muslims or not, that's a point about whether this person, anyway, there's so much division. And the idea ends up being using the different things that drive a wedge between us, whether or not it's even relevant. Like back to that point with Trump, shouldn't it be about what he's claiming he's going to do? And then we should be holding him feet to the fire and what he actually does, not just that he's a Muslim and he hates Jews and this is his name and you are jihadist. It's just dumb. Like the level of discourse in this country, not the people, you understand, but the discourse of the so-called leadership and upper echelon is just like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. At least so far in this country. Like, it's been so, and again, I think in a larger sense, that's being done to us. But he says he's a man of hate. He doesn't love Israel. Interesting. He doesn't love Jewish people. He hates them with a passion that burns in his heart. That's what Trump just said. That's not a thing he can do about it because he hates them. Safe to say Trump doesn't like him. Well, here's the thing, guys. I don't support any of them. I'm going to go on to show you that just like Mom Donnie, I think this guy's just playing into a demographic that recognizes Israel. That's the opportunism I keep talking about. So you can get it in some ways where he's like, good, Israel bad. And we're going, good, great. You can see it. But then what does he do? He talks about continuing to censor based on any kind of hate speech. He talks about supporting the Ukraine war. So really, all you get is, yes, Israel's bad. Now, even then, does he follow through with that? Mamdani sure didn't. He's still talking about censoring for anti-Semitism. He's still pulling back on his promises to arrest Netanyahu, and we'll see where it goes. At the end of the day, he may be better than Randy Fine in regard to Israel, but when it really comes to what happens to Americans, is he any change? Who knows? Because here's my thought on this. You can say all this stuff, and it's like saying Roger Stone hates Jews and wants to see them all killed. Is that what he's ever said? No. Is that, or like Corbyn or anything? In fact, they don't even think that. But because you go, oh, look, he said Palestine's wonderful, that means all these things right here. And that's just insultingly stupid. Now, Trump doesn't even care about it's true. That's the talking point. That is because politics, and that's how it's played. You say, and they all think that. Now, here's what's crazy. I'm not supporting this guy, and I'll show you why in a second. But it's interesting with the contrast. Here are some things that he just said when asked explicitly about Israel and Jews. And then you're going to laugh. And then you can look at this and go, what is he talking about? So where would this come from? Where would it come from to say he hates Jews with a passion and wants to see them all killed? Israel. There's really no other way, or people that are pro-Israel who want to remove a guy who's not, or at the very least to drive this very clear, if you are anti-Israel, you hate Jews narrative, whether or not all people involved support the larger government agenda. So here's what he just said in regard, speaking with CNN about this.
Clarify for us what your position is on funding for Israel if you do become a U.S. Senator. Are you opposed to all funding for Israel, period, military funding?
I'm opposed to unconditional military aid for any country. That is Israel, yes, but that's also Egypt, where my family immigrated from. That's Pakistan, that's Saudi Arabia, that's UAE. And that's not because of a focus on what's happening anywhere except for a focus on what's happening here. We've got community.
Oh, so actually America first. Now, not even saying he means that, guys, but that's what, if he was going to follow through, what an actual America first stance would be. right? Not specific wedge issues, but just generally speaking, whatever he thought was best for the country first, in a genuine sense. But the idea, why is it even starting with would you feel Israel defending Israel and funding Israel? Like, it's weird on its face that this is the focal point, guys. Why is that the focal point? Because our politicians and our media and our establishment has made that more important than your interests, even as there's a epidemic of people going America first. You really can't miss that. And that's why this has become so haywire with the NDAA and everything else. It's just all coming to a head. It feels desperate.
Communities in my state where the median income is $14,000, and I believe they have a right to their tax dollars. I also believe in international law and upholding international law, and there are Leahy laws against dealing arms to countries who are engaged in human rights abuse.
And you'd think that this would be like, oh, well, obviously, if he actually meant it, right? Her response would be like, well, clearly, that's a great answer. Yes, they're breaking the law. Yes, they're committing war crimes. So clearly, if there's a law that says you can't give funds to war criminals, then that would be obvious. Now, you don't even call it a genocide if you don't want to. If anyone's pretending, including CNN, which they're not, by the way, that there's no war crimes being committed by Israel, well, then sure, make the argument. But see, the idea is none of that matters because your follow-up is, well, I'll let it speak for itself.
And I don't want to fund a foreign military that does genocide, apartheid, or has taken us to a war we don't need to fight. I believe in equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination for Jewish Israelis and Palestinians alike. I believe our responsibility, though, more than anything else, is to use our tax money here in Michigan to provide healthcare in Michigan, and schools in Michigan, and roads in Michigan, rather than to send it to a foreign government that might use it in the form of bombs and tanks to destroy infrastructure and schools and hospitals there.
And what's weird is that this whole thing they do with this kind of thing, it's sort of like when peers would be like, but do you condemn Hamas? It's as if it's almost as if they are going like, we all know you don't mean that. We all know that you really just hate Jews. And so your tricky answer is to be like, but I care for everybody. It's like the whole all lives matter to Black Lives Matter. We know you hate Black people. It's like, that's not true. It can be, but this game is, it is political manipulation and people fall for it. Here's what she says after all of that. Now you could argue he doesn't mean it, but there's not a single example where you're going to find him going, Jews are bad and we should kill them all. That's not out there. They're simply going, he likes, he's a Muslim and he thinks Palestine should be free. So that completely converts to all Jews shouldn't exist. That's not true. And frankly, I don't even think most Zionists believe that.
Some people might hear that and say, well, does he support, funding defensive systems like the Iron Dome in Israel?
I mean, that's her actual follow-up, guys. That's not a joke. That's not cut. He goes through all the answer about how we should care about Americans first and the money should be here first. And on top of that, we shouldn't be sending money to people committing war crimes, especially since laws in our own country say we shouldn't be doing that. Some people would hear that as you don't want defensive either. What do you say to that? It's like, I mean, I would laugh. I would literally laugh on that show and be like, are you sick? I'd have to make a point about that. But, he's been doing the rounds. And again, I frankly I don't believe in these people. So I don't think, I don't know, I'll leave it there, but watch his response.
Do you?
I don't believe that there's really a difference between offensive or defensive weapons. And I also don't believe it's my responsibility to buy defensive weapons for a foreign government when our kids are Now
watch as he ultimately ends up voting for that with some kind of but this and it's a rider on a bill, whatever. I hope I'm wrong, but watch. But so it's just crazy that he has to go through and be like, why do I have to explain this?
Defenseless against schools that have been underfunded for a very, very long time. Yeah. My responsibility as the next senator from Michigan is children in Michigan, rather than thinking about what's in the interest of a foreign government.
Okay, so that's a yes, that you are against funding to things like the Iron Dome.
Yeah, because I just said that. She just wants him to state it. Because the entire point of this was to get the gotcha moment where, see, he said it, he hates Jews. And this is CNN, Fox, CNN, it's the same deal, guys. It's all the same thing. I just can't believe that that's the answer. And it's so transparent. If you're her, you're thinking anyway, the question is she in mind with that? Or is she a mindless follower told by the editors to say they're, who knows? But I'd be embarrassed if I were her. And frankly, I don't think they even care.
I am against it in large part because I just
see she's like, oh God, no, hates Jews. Got it.
Don't understand why anybody thinks it's the right thing to do to send our tax dollars abroad to fund foreign militaries when our own kids barely get to go to schools that are functional.
Yeah, crazy, right? He hates Jews, obviously. You know, that's about how dumb this is. Now, what's crazy though is you almost want to look at this like presenting him as such an obvious counterbalance to all the absurdities, so that you lean into him like a Gabbard, like a Massey. You know, and again, I don't know if Massey will pan out or not, but so many of them, RFK Jr., have ultimately come with all the promise and then just nosedive right into the same old problem. So maybe that's the point. Don't know. Now, my suggestion is not to just ignore him and not follow. Is hope. Have hope for Tucker. Have hope that he means what he says. Just don't blindly then follow along. Be more, hold them to account more than anybody because you believe in them. I mean, that has to be the way this works. So again, he hates Jews. He's a man of hate. He doesn't love Israel. He doesn't love Jewish people. Like, what a weird thing that you have to require to love anybody when you're, it's just, but obviously his point is he hates him with a passion that burns in his heart. It's just weird. And you have to realize that's somebody pulling Trump strings or just giving him talking points and he's just too dumb to not repeat them. Who knows? Here's another one posted by Voice of Rabbis. And this is an account that I've pointed out many times in the past that is a very prominent, in this is the smaller one. 309, they've gone up quite a bit. But there's a couple of them, and they're associated with the Orthodox Jewish communities that protest Zionism in Israel and other places in the world. And this Jews United Against Zionism, pretty prominent account. He's on this video. I see if I don't think I have it. Oh, I did. Okay. It's just, he says, and what's weird about this is he says, I love Judaism. I love the Jewish people. So what a stupid thing to have Trump come out and say that. Well, so again, you could argue he's lying, but at what point do you get the other side of that? You don't. Right. And so I just feel like this is all kind of orchestrated, not in the sense of, I shouldn't say orchestrated, but just sort of there's a guidance to this and they're playing their roles in it.
And Israel are not the same.
Correct.
As Judaism and the Jewish people.
Correct.
I love Judaism and I love the Jewish people.
And he's right. Right? That's the whole point I'm making. But is this guy simply tapping into things that we're doing and saying that just, anybody like us doing that in order to gain support? That's what you should be questioning. Hoping for the best, questioning and hope and watching for the worst.
I venerate Judaism and I venerate the Jewish people. I stand with Judaism and I stand with the Jewish people. And the single most dangerous thing that they've tried to tell us is that somehow they can extend the definition of anti-Semitism to include a foreign government and its leaders. I call bullshit. No.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll find out whether he means what he's saying, right? But the same point applies, is that ultimately he's already been clear, as the video I just played last time, that he says, it was asked in another corporate interview, and they simply said, same kind of thing she did. And he makes the clear point. That's hold on, I just lost the train of thought on it. It was, that's weird. It just completely slipped my mind. Well, I mean, the general point is the same, is that, there's other examples of him. Oh, that's what it was. The censorship is they said, well, are you going to help defend Jews who are being attacked and so on? And his point was like, look, we will continue to, what was the word he used? Basically, the suggestion was what the actions are taking against people who are saying things about Jews, or at least that they frame that way, even though they talk about Palestine in many cases, is the same actions against people who do it against Muslims or do it against Christians. And it may sound like a nice answer, but the truth is that means, okay, then we're going to censor hate speech everywhere, which was always the point, guys. It was always the point. It's just more of a focal point when it comes to anti-Semitism. It's still just an open door to censor and remove people that don't agree with the government agenda, like we saw during Israel. Khalil and Ozturk, who were simply going genocide, and they almost got deported. Garcia basically did. The other two got arrested and held for a long time. So... and this was the secondary point. We must defend democracy in Ukraine and win it at home too. Authored by Abdul El Said. Defend democracy in Ukraine? Didn't you just say that we were talking not money to Israel? Is that now because Israel is another you see as the other side of the agenda, but you think Democrats want to defend Ukraine? It's hypocritical, guys. It's a principle. So again, my point is we'll see when it comes to pass. But as this guy says, Nick Cruz says, congratulations, you guys elected another senator who will send more money to Nazis in Ukraine, which is Israel, guys. It's the same overlapping point. So I just don't believe it. So all that's not about supporting a politician or not. It's about seeing through it all and that Trump is calling him a Jew hater, and this side is, it's meant to create the very same game we've always been trapped in. Or I guess elongate it, continue it, or at least just as long enough until they can get us into what's coming next. But you know what will stay the same because nobody's asking for anything different. We're just going through the same hamster wheel of the left and the right. As your Mark says, Americans are now spending more on taxes than on food, clothing, housing combined. No big deal, right? The golden age, isn't it? How wonderful. And meanwhile, rent costs, U.S. rent prices versus income. Look at it as it continues to skyrocket. And look at the difference. Look at the gap. For the podcast, it ends on 2023, and it just simply shows you where it has continued to, and it's only worse right now. It's going up. Okay, so on that note, do you feel like the world is being reimagined in a better way to the benefit of Americans, or maybe just the benefit of Trump's inner circle? Even that, is that happening? Maybe they're profiteering, maybe, but interesting point. Shannon Joy shared this. Glenn Beck is wrong, she says. I agree. She says Trump is a criminal. This is not 12D chess. There's no trust the plan. Just stop, Glenn Beck. No one's buying it anymore. Well, some are hoping into it, hopium, as it were. But Glenn Beck, Donald Trump is changing the new world order entirely. What do you mean? See, this is what's funny. These guys, I think, are just desperately trying to tap into, and I see them as as much as they're still very influential, especially with a certain aging demographic. But the point is that I feel like they're tapping into what they think will gain them some kind of momentum as a sort of a dying thing. But when you say changing the new world order, what does that mean? The new world order, well, first of all, it depends on if you want to talk about it like it's an organization, which is what the old stool kind of, that's how they used to frame the conspiracy theorists as it's all the new world order, like a group, versus a new world order, which is a general sentiment that governments have put out, Reagan, plenty, about, a change from like post-World War II to, that's where we are right now. Sort of a new world, talking about the multipolar versus the that's the idea. But changing the new world order is a weird way to frame that. I just think he's trying to tap in with a certain group of people that want to hear the buzzwords. But I also think it's about him trying to tell you or sell you on the idea that Trump is a mastermind. Haven't we already talked about this, guys? This is just him jumping on the bandwagon way too late, in my opinion. That Trump is reorganizing the global dynamic with all of his actions and not just spinning out as losing and overstepping and blindly following Netanyahu into his own detriment. You can decide. But the one thing I think is hilarious, whatever it is that one thing we've been considering, not blindly going, this is happening like an Alex Jones or Glenn Beck, but talking about the possibility is exactly of this, haven't we? Right? The idea. That's the best one to read. Trump and the Zionist globalist technocrats are building your new society, whether you like it or not. 2025, December, and it goes before that. And these are just my opinions about what I think we're seeing with the network state agenda, with the new board of peace. But what I think is hilarious is so many people in their circles and in their audiences were like, you guys are just a bunch of haters. You're just Trump derangement syndrome. He's not the great reset. He's not doing that. And then now you get Glenn Beck coming out and telling you that what I've been saying the entire time is actually correct. And now, even though what it seems like now is different than what I was thinking at that point, same thing Alex Jones is doing right now, guys. I just think this is hilarious. And what you'll never get from any of this or anywhere, it seems, is to going, look at how crazy it was that Ryan was saying this back in January. Oh my God, look at him calling out all the conservatives are shifting sides back then when nobody was pointing it out. I don't need that, because we're going to continue to do the job regardless. But I think it's hilarious to me that that's how the system works. And that's why it's artificial, at least in one of the many parts. I'll play just a little bit of this.
Explain to me what you mean when you say that these are indications that President Trump is resetting the world order and the implication of that.
Donald Trump.
Now, first, remember that she on the left was one of those people holding up the most transparent administration in history, Epstein binders. That's her. That's one of the people that was telling you that the Epstein story was coming down and Trump's going to show us, and then gaslit everybody to ignore it when Trump said so. So that's why she's here, just in case that was unclear.
Trump is changing the new world order entirely, and it won't be fully understood for probably another 5 to 10 years.
Well, isn't that convenient for Glenn Beck's prediction that as it happens, you just get to keep keeping people on the hook for maybe when that comes to pass, and hope that you don't wake up in some kind of technocratic hellscape because Glenn Beck told you that you would be, the golden age. So wait a minute. How are we in the golden age right now, Glenn? As you've pointed out before when Trump said it, when we're building this thing that's going to be the nice endpoint for everyone to be happy. How's that work? These guys will say whatever they need to say. That's what they do, guys. Frankly, I just see it in this guy's eyes. If you want my honest opinion, it's my gut that there's a time there, like a dwindling. Look at Alex Jones. Look at his audience. Like, it's obvious these people have whatever they were tapping into, they've lost the control of it, and people are seeing through them.
That on top of he says it's over $20 trillion of investment. Let's just say it's 10 trillion.
Isn't it interestingly, 20 trillion is a huge chunk. And actually, before the Iran war and maybe the last administration, that's about where the debt was.
$10 trillion in building new factories here at home. So we are making things again.
What is that? What are you talking about, man? So there's just some hypothetical number that you claim is there that we can't verify, but it's going to be used to rebuild the country after we destroy everything else, after we allow the technocrats and Zionists to control us. It'll all work out in the end. Give it 5 years, you'll build some factories. What do you think, guys? Even supporters of Trump, does that make that feel like that makes sense right now? And are you willing to just hope it'll all work out in the end?
With AI, with the rebuilding of factories, with the dominance of energy and oil.
Oh, yeah. And how's that working out? Now, yes, I too considered the argument. And who knows? We'll see. But that's not how this is working out, guys. Very clearly. Multiple reasons why. So, so is the argument, well, I'll let him finish. He has a point to say here that I think is relevant about what it all comes down to, that it's all a gamble with your country, your lives, your freedom, your everything, just to hope that it ends up in the benefit.
Sorry, gang, but the world doesn't work without real energy, without gas, LP, and oil.
Oh, it absolutely does. Just not in the way that these people want it to. I mean, if you're just going to be real about it, you could live your life without any of that stuff. Yes, a lot of electricity and convenience and all that. I'm not saying you should, it's your choice. But the idea that the world only works one way, and you could even talk about different forms of energy and not even necessarily the new green Great Reset types. Just the idea that this is how it has to work is just not true. Ask Nikola Tesla. But at the end of the day, guys, these are people trying to keep you tapped into the current status quo for their benefit. My opinion.
With controlling the choke points, getting out of the Middle East, hopefully, if this works.
Right. Clearly, that'll all work out. I mean, let me ask you this, guys. How do you think this works out? Let's just say Trump wins, whatever it looks like. Walk me through how that gets us out of the Middle East. I mean, really, let's not be stupid about this. Did we get out of Iraq? Did we get out of Syria? Did we get out of any? No, guys. Do you really believe that going to war in Iran is going to get us out of the Middle East? What do you think will happen next? What about Hezbollah? What about, I mean, Israel will create what it needs to justify what it's doing. So too does the U.S. government. But even if you don't agree with that, give me the logic point on how going to war with Iran gets us out of the Middle East, or rather gets the U.S. government out. It does not. Historically, logically. So listen to Glenn Beck, though. He'll wax intellectual about how great everything is right into the ground.
He's completely redesigned the entire world. He has made a bigger impact than any other president, maybe since Lincoln.
I mean, guys, come on. Now, look, to be fair, though, this is clipped, obviously, right? He could watch the entire thing, which is included. If you really want to break it down, it doesn't really change his arguments. I mean, look, what could you possibly fill in to argue that he's better than Lincoln? I mean, guys, he's failing spectacularly. I mean, this is not my opinion anymore. Conservatives, at least a huge portion, which I think is very clearly the majority, are just screaming about how this guy has failed them. But this guy will double down because that's what they do. I mean, what are you going to do? You've built your entire world into this. You could take an Alex Jones route, but that's not working out well for him to suddenly go, now he's a globalist. It's like, well, that's what I was saying before. They're just, guys, it's just clear what's happening. Like the system, these are people that have built their world around the system, even though they pretend to fight it. And now as the system actually seems to be warping in some way, this is how they're reacting. At least that's how I would read that. Or you could do what we do and just honestly engage with this and reflect based on the information in front of you and not guess into the future based on what you want people to think you're thinking. You know, it's just honesty, principles, integrity. And I could be wrong. I'm not any more better or worse than anybody else out there. I just care. And I do what I can when I can. Like all of you. The difference is they are not like that.
He becomes one of the most impactful presidents of all time if it works.
Okay. So the gamble is our entire world, all the things you care about. So walk me through what the downside is. What if he fails, Glenn? We could destroy everything. So Trump could maybe end up, what it really comes down to is Trump is risking gambling all of it for his legacy. Now, you could argue that legacy might coincide with a better world for America. I doubt that, but let's just say that's the case. Are you willing to make that gamble? Are you willing to gamble the direction of this country so Trump can have a legacy of saving us? That's not American interest. That's not America first. That's America gains by a byproduct of Trump benefiting himself. If it ends up that way, which I doubt it will.
That jury is still out. But if it works, he changes the entire course of the world. Everything that he has done is 100% America first.
This is how stupid this is. Was that in the Epstein binder too? You walk me through how funding Israel is America first. Walk me through how putting us to a war with Iran is America first. Guys, every single thing they've done is not in American interests. That's why he's challenged and double-crossed all the Maha promises, because Americans wanted those things, not the people he actually works for. So they went the other direction. That's generally my opinion, but I shouldn't even need to go any further. Not 100%. Not one thing he's done has been not America. That's just dumb. Nobody believes that. But blind followers will go along with it because it sounds nice. This is what I was I'm hoping that I'm being tricked by Democrat media. Oh, thank God Glenn Beck said that's the truth because I want that to be the truth. That's the kind of person that falls for that. Nobody honest.
The problem is nobody in the media will explain it. Everybody wants to look at everything he does as a one-off. And you know what? If I hadn't been traveling with him,
you know what that means? Trust him. That's what that means. Because it's not one thing, it's the plan. It's how it all comes together. Cool. So Glenn Beck says, trust the power. Trust the people in power. Has that ever been the right answer? No, you can have hope for them, but you do not trust. You continue to be critical because even if they mean what they say, they could fail. They could be tricked. They could be manipulated. So you hold their feet to the fire. This is just basic logic, guys. These people aren't either that stupid or that dishonest.
During the election, I don't know if I would have seen it as quickly as I did. This guy has been thinking this through forever. People,
based on what? Did he write a book? Did he send you a letter? You're reading his mind? You see what I mean? Where is this even coming from? Where do you feel like you're getting this insight into some long-term plan? Again, you're just supposed to assume that Glenn Beck has the inside word and that he knows Trump, and so they talk about it. Even that would mean that Trump told you that, and why would we trust that he means it? The naivety here is insane, but really it's about getting you to feel that.
Try to make him look like a bumbling idiot, and they don't realize.
Sometimes he is, guys, and that's just clear. Sometimes he's not. And sometimes the Democrat media lies about him. That happens too.
Realize there is genius behind this. There is.
Right. Don't you know he can turn over a map or a placemat and draw the Middle East just like that, even though he can't remember the names of the countries when he's speaking about it. Clearly, it all lines up.
Real strategy. He tried to fix America's economy. What happened? The next guy comes in, destroys it all.
Oh, Biden's fault. Simple, right? Even though you can clearly show that wasn't the reality when he ended, and you can clearly show that he's exponentially made this worse since coming into power. But yeah, Biden played his role, just like they all do. Just a linear increase of all the problems, and it fluctuates here and there, but it's pretty much always going up. It's just what we've been telling you our entire life doing this.
He's trying to fix it. So by fixing the bigger problems, the structural problems that start overseas with the WEF, all of our trade agreements.
Right. So now Alex is calling him a globalist, by the way. So as Glenn Beck says, he's the globalist, he's fighting, but Alex Jones is going, he is a globalist. Now they're working together. Maybe you guys should talk and realize that now you're both contradicting each other. But it's funny that at the end of the day, you're telling us he needs to go fight the WF. Why are we in a war with Iran for Israel? Walk me through that, Glenn. Or in what discernible way is he even fighting the WEF? He literally went to Davos both times. He literally has agreements with people there. He literally has the Gaza Freedom City being built in conjunction with people. He built the Board of Peace. He's got, guys, just lazy. This is low information content, guys.
Agreements and tariffs and everything else. By fixing those, he believes I can fix the economy long term.
And how'd the tariffs go? Oh, that's right. He got screwed. Oh, they're going to claim it was the Democrats that failed him. At the end of the day, guys, Lutnick knew that was going to happen. That's why he benefited from it early. Or rather, he did it early and then benefited after the fact when they pulled it back, and ultimately all the refunds went back to the companies, even though they raised their prices and you spent more. Swear to God, I feel like that was planned. Like ultimately was some kind of inside agreement to dump money from us into the hands of corporations so they don't push back on things that he does that hurt their businesses. I don't know just how that felt for me. But either way, walk me through how that was a benefit, how that changed the global dynamic. This guy is just going off buzzwords and talking points, guys. The real scary thing is maybe he even believes this.
If you can get there, we save the world, not just the nation. We save the world.
Why do you think that people don't see the strategy?
You mean the strategy that no one's outlined, the strategy that no one's clearly pointing to, the strategy that doesn't even discernibly exist outside of Glenn Beck saying it? Maybe they don't see it because it's not there. Duh. These people, why do you think you can't see the thing that's nowhere to be seen that no one's heard about? Go ahead. Let me know how it's great.
They've fallen into the trap. The enemy is Donald Trump.
Of course. The Democrats. They made you think Trump is a bad guy. So that means that the thing you did that we can't see is the good thing. Like, the logic is, I mean, what does he even say? The idea that we're just supposed to assume the plan that's not being pointed to is good because Democrats lie about him? Where's the connection? Where's the logic?
The enemy is the pedophile government, whatever the enemy is.
Yeah, the ones covering up the Epstein files. I mean, that's what conservatives think, guys. What are you talking about? She was the one holding the Epstein binder.
And if you just say that's the enemy, you can get all of these people who believe all these different things to stand together.
Sure,
and it's imperative.
Certainly could, but it's also possible too that that's what's going on. What's the suggestion that we should be ignoring the evidence of all the things of him pardoning people that are pedophiles, of him literally allowing a pedophile back to Israel that got caught trying to rape a child, Abramovich, or any number of examples, or happening in his first administration. Like, yes, Kash Patel can talk about arresting pedophiles in the streets all day long. Whether that's even accurate, I talked about last time. There's yet to be evidence to verify all the things he claims he's done. But in real world sense, you have the Epstein victims going, these people are protecting pedophiles. You walk me through how that's not relevant.
Imperative that for those of us who actually believe in the country,
believe, have faith in the country. We're not talking about the country, Glenn. We're talking about the government. But see, that's what he does.
We don't engage in the grievance. We engage instead on, we hold these truths to be self-evident.
Oh my God. You're talking about, now you're talking about the founding documentation of which the U.S. government right now is wiping their ass with. Literally, Biden, Trump, I just can't even take this seriously, and neither should you. It's not even worth the time I just took to go through this. But, people fall for this stuff.
This is what we need to fix and rebuild, not what we're going to destroy, what we're going to rebuild.
Wow. Well, let's hope, as I said. I certainly hope that's what's happening. Even if we hate these people, right? It doesn't matter if you, Biden, Trump, if you absolutely despise them, you should still hope that the good thing happens, because it would argue, the same thing we talked about during COVID is people, and it happened a lot, especially then, that there are people that were so desperately anti-Trump that they just didn't want the country to succeed. Or technically, I shouldn't say COVID, but the first administration that overlapped into COVID. Is that they would literally want the country to fail because they hated Trump so much. That just makes you a stupid person, makes you a hypocrite. That means you only care about personal petty hatred. I can hate any of them, but still want them to do what they say they're going to do if I think that's best for the country. It just seems basic, guys. Basic stuff. Now, just an interesting kind of overview here. And just this is probably 30% of the different times we've covered stuff like this. So 2024, technocratic regime change. Under the guise of freedom, technocrats are slowly taking control. Talking about just the New World Order, the Great Reset, like the idea of him reorganizing the way the world. We talked about it a lot around the Iran conversation, the Strait of Hormuz as well. Trump and the Zionist globalist technocrats are building your new society, whether you like it or not. Now, see, what he's leaving out, of course, is the Zionist globalist technocrat part of it. Just the idea that Trump is doing that. But you can prove that he's connected with all these people, including the Bill Gates they want you to think is somehow not happy right now. This one, 2025, the network state coup and the engineered transition to what they literally do call tech Zionism. It's in their book. Pronomos capital on the rapid transition to a techno-feudal state. There's Trump's new $2 billion WHO, as we literally talk about in this conversation about how he's building a new global order. Trump goes to Davos. Globalism is dead. Long live globalism. I wonder how Glenn Beck missed all of this. And this one goes back to 2025. The fake globalist resistance ushering in the globalist plan. Look at that guy. January. That was my opinion. I think we've been proven right. This is a report from Robert Inlakesh. How Trump and Israel are crafting a new world order. That was July 2026. This one's 2026 as well, January. Gaza's board of peace seeks to reimagine the international order. And I just think it's all I'm pointing out, guys, is as we're going through all this with source material and proving what we're saying, you got people like that were yelling us down for saying we hate Trump and you're anti, he's America first. He's not about globalism. And now he's literally telling you that he's building a new world order. So how can he be fighting globalists if he's becoming a globalist? He already is. Now, Alex Jones is taking a different path of just admitting what he's been hiding the entire time, because it's been clear the entire time, but I don't feel it's honest. But isn't that just ridiculous? Now, lastly on this, here's Alex Jones in 2025 saying, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the face of the enemy. Now, think about where we are right now. What do you think the enemy is? Democrats still exist. So think about it. Where are we right now? See, this is my point about the government. Just left and right, it's the government, guys. Now, they have different opinions, but at the end of the day, it's one agenda. And yes, the woke agenda, trans stuff, horrifying. And I called it all out at the time. We broke it down. But here's the thing, guys. Was that the real focal point? It's something we obviously should care about for 1,000 reasons. And it doesn't mean it just stops being important when other bigger things are happening. But the point is, what's really the bigger picture? Was their agenda to force you to call people pronouns? Or was that the manipulation to get your foot in the door in other parts of the country or other parts of the world, to manipulate your speech, to justify censorship? So here, Alex Jones in 2025 February is saying, here's your enemy. The Calvin Coolidge Project says Wisconsin Democrat governor is supporting a proposed law that didn't ultimately happen that turns the word mother into inseminated personnel, which is insane. Like literally about the dumbest. It's insane. So as I said, obviously this is absurdly stupid and should be fought. But if you think that that is what you're fighting right now, and not rampant technocratic globalism guided by radical Zionists quite literally raping and murdering on TV, you've lost the plot, in my opinion. February 2025, look at where we are, okay? Because it was clear. Now, those things matter to me. I called them out too. He was trying to distract or wasn't able to see the bigger picture. And it was because Trump was the one building all of this, or at least part of it at this point, right? And so look at where we're going now beyond this. Like the idea of what these Zionists are building. And it's not just, anyway, that's important to think about. And realize that there are people like this will still mislead you when it matters, in my opinion. And again, I hope they're suddenly seeing it. Now, talking about the technocratic surveillance and censorship, flock and all that together, actually a few quick updates on this that I want to include. One is a good positive development. Who knows? I mean, here's the thing I'll say on, in conjunction with this, actually, these are positive things. But the problem is right now, and this is not new, but it's more rampant and clear than ever, the government doesn't care about the law. It very clearly does not care about your rights. It clearly will just ignore it when it wants to. So what's important to realize is that you'll have these rulings that say, oh, they can't do that. Now it's illegal. Well, they'll do it anyway. It's still a good thing because now we can try to use the system to hold them accountable. But as a system that's increasingly being ignored, it's becoming more difficult, right? I mean, it's being driven to something new. Problem, reaction, solution. They want us to go, the thing doesn't work. So they present you with the new thing that they want you to accept. But this is still positive. But all I still want to highlight is that they'll still do it. We just need to call that out and make more pressure, the better. SCOTUS Wire reports a federal judge ruled that the tower dump warrants, where essentially they just kind of scoop up everybody from any phone that was pinged on a tower or one of the cars they use, which will allow police to obtain records for every cell phone that connected to a nearby cell tower, which is obviously unconstitutional, around any given crime scene or any other thing they use it for, are per se unconstitutional, meaning simply just specifically under the Fourth Amendment as general warrants. Good. That's great news. That is a good thing. I don't think I had anything on this. Why is that not going back? It's weird. See that? Oh, there it goes. I just zoom in to do that. That was weird. Anyway, that's a positive thing. But don't forget that on top of that, don't forget, this was one of the stories of Israel's Palantir rival is selling $1 million spy vans to U.S. cops. And it's an Israeli company. And tech, and the point was they're using them as like stingray devices. So they would just simply come out and park there, and all your phones would connect to it, and it would get all of your information, text messages. It's insanely illegal and unconstitutional. And they don't just keep telling us how they only use it for criminals. Like this has been abused, and they use it on protesters. It's everywhere, guys. So the fact that they ruled that was unconstitutional matters. So call them out for it. But look, we have ICE agents out there covering their faces, not presenting warrants, spraying people. I mean, I want to go through some examples right now. But realize that it still matters. Your rights still matter, whether they respect them or not. Because these things you understand they're beyond the government, guys. These are inherent, unalienable rights, God-given rights, which means they exist whether or not they wrote them down in the Constitution. That's the whole point. That's why they wrote it that way. They're inherent rights. So whether or not they respect them now doesn't mean they disappear. They're there regardless. They're just choosing to not respect them. So we need to use this to push back. If you want to, I think it matters. If we're forced to live in a state of society, I think it does. Jesus freaking Congress had two things I want to share, two clips of ICE. Now, again, I've gone through the horror stories, right? Like a lot of these, of the like U.S. citizens getting beat up and detained and arrested for multiple days under no charge. The Reitz was one of the most obvious. Veteran. I want to highlight continually is this just rampant lawlessness, but like lazy, like spraying somebody with mace for no reason. Just showing you that not only are they willing to break the law, violate your rights, but they clearly do not think that it will ever be held accountable. Even though it's on video, even though everybody can see it. And you know what? They seem to be right. Trump's administration, at the very least, literally does not care whether they will break the law, violate American rights. Tell me, Glenn Beck, how that's America first, will you? And I'm not talking about green card holders, even though they have just the same constitutional rights as you, Glenn. Even though who knows? I don't know if he's ever claimed otherwise, but most of them are too stupid to realize that that's the case, or they lie to you about it anyway. But regardless, the point is that people have rights, and that should matter. And if they're violated by the U.S. authority, that's not America first. That's, well, I guess technically that wouldn't be, I think in reality with what we're dealing with, it seems to be Israel first based on the fact that they're doing a lot of this and training the IDF and the ICE and police across the country to some degree. But anyway, I digress. The point in this clip is that you have a person here just harassing American citizens. ICE agent pulls a gun and a taser on an unarmed U.S. citizen simply for recording them. Now, of course, the people that want to criticize, and you can feel right. I mean, look, you could argue they're being abrasive, but you have to understand what they're doing is legal and absolutely within their rights. Two things: they hate it because one, they're being told to stop and they don't. No police officer likes people that don't just blindly follow their orders. But then on top of that, because they're breaking the law, guys, and they know that. And not just covering their faces. We've gone through an endless string of, whether they're robbing people, stealing their cars, any number of things, or violating their rights, arresting people without charge. They get it on film and they can lose their job, or at least if a court does something about it today, it seems. So I want to highlight this as a U.S. citizen who is simply filming them, whether or not you think they're being abrasive. And also, by the way, following them. If you want to follow along on a public street, you're allowed to do that. It's been ruled. It's clearly the reality. But they hate it for the reasons I stated or whatever else. So here, if this is an American citizen being treated this way. Now you have to ask yourself, what do you care about? Do you care that they just get what they deserve because they're a Democrat, or you assume that? Or do you recognize that as an American, no matter what you think they're doing that irritates the cop, they have a right to do it? And so if they point their gun at them, if they try to create a context situation where they treat them as the criminal, are you okay with that? And if the answer is yes, then you're a hypocrite. And on top of that, let's not forget that ICE agents are using flock cameras to spy on Americans. So if you're against flock cameras and unconstitutional surveillance, then you should be against ICE using it. Seems like it matters.
Hey, he's not doing anything.
I believe there's cussing, so earmuffs for those with the children watching today, as there are families that choose to watch the show together. I think that's great, as opposed to the ridiculous corporate media.
Anything illegal, back up.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Okay, so he says, I'm not doing anything illegal, back up. And he's not. And they know that. He even mentions, I know this one. So they're observing. That's what they do. This used to be, guys, let's not forget, as the Free Thought Project and Jason Bassler with Police to Police. And this is what a lot of those cop watchers do. And this has been going on for decades, guys. They've literally, since there have been cameras, you have people that are watching cops, and some of their jobs are just to follow along and just film when they're working. That's been there forever. That's why there's so many Supreme Court rulings that say that you have a right to do it. So it doesn't change because Trump's angry at immigrants or whatever you want to argue, or the fact that they are ICE agents instead.
Hey, he's not doing anything illegal, back up.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing? How you guys doing today? Oh, I know this one.
Just look at the casual nature. Do you realize that in some police departments, or at least as I was told it used to be, every time a gun is pulled, there's supposed to be a report. Do you think they're doing that? So literally, they have a gun pulled and a taser pulled because you've got kids filming. Literally, like 20-somethings. Or I shouldn't say kids, but younger people with filming. They're allowed to film, and they know that. They're just trying to threaten them.
Mr. President.
Oops, sorry, hit the wrong button.
Hey, just so
Just so you know, you're being recorded, all right?
We never do
Stop
anything
following
illegal.
us. Stop following us.
It's totally legal to follow you.
Stop following us.
It's totally legal to
It is. All right. And so he just keeps threatening them.
can observe law enforcement.
You
Legal
won't
to
be
follow you.
arrested, sir.
It's totally
He said you won't be arrested, but you won't like the outcome.
legal to follow
Stop
you.
following us.
It's totally legal to
We
follow
can
you.
observe law
It is totally
enforcement. You
legal
won't
to
be
follow you.
arrested, sir.
It is
Have a good
totally,
day, all right?
it is totally legal.
You have a good day, sir. All right, stop following us.
No.
Trust me, you're not going to like the outcome.
They're going to block you.
I mean, what else do you take that as? He's threatening them. Now, you may find it a minor thing. It is in comparison to some of the more egregious things they've done, but it just shows you just this lazy violation. They don't care. These are secret police. They don't need warrants. They don't need to identify. I mean, that one doesn't have a mask on for the first time in however long, but they don't care. Pulling their guns out, threatening American citizens for doing what's within their rights.
You in here. They're going to block you in.
Now, this is a very common tactic that the courts have called out more than once, where they're sort of like kettling when the protest, they block them on a purpose. The car stops in front, he pulls up behind them. Now, people have been shot for this, for them creating a choke point or having them jump out and stand in front of the car. And then the moment they try to back up, the car moves, they act like they're being threatened with the car and they open fire. That's happened more than once. People have been murdered in the street because they claim they were being hit with a car and the court rules it didn't happen. And guess what? Nobody gets held accountable.
Ooh, they're going to hit our car.
Park. Just out park. Just park. Just get out.
Get moving.
Guys, why are you blocking the road?
You're blocking. You're in front of us.
So you can clearly see the car. Why are you blocking the road? So he's just playing along. He's just playing around. Thanks for wasting tax dollars to harass a couple of people doing things within their rights. That's what he did. Now, I mean, tell me that this couldn't just as easily have spun out into some kind of a violent act if they just simply did, hit the gas on accident or tried to move out of the way and they thought they were trying to hit their car. It could have. But that's why that ends up being created, to put them in the position where they're the ones violating so they can act however they want. Even though they're not violent, they've created it, right?
Guys, why are you blocking the road?
You're blocking. You're in front of
Guys,
us.
why are you blocking the
We
road?
can't move. You're in front of us.
Jesus, guys, you guys are crazy, man.
And for all we know, that's just for their cameras, so they can argue later in court that they did something if something happens. I mean, you have to understand, these guys are being trained how to do that. Of course, they're not trained on how to care about your rights, but they're sure as hell trained how to cover their butts. So here's another example. Same thing. Now, this one specifically where they go up to a guy who's just working, who is legally in this country, and ultimately they just harass him. And at the end, just simply go, the reality of it is that they're going up and asking without knowing who he is. And we know what they're doing. And again, smaller in the context of, breaking somebody's arm or shooting somebody in the arm. At the end of the day, this is a violation of their rights. And they do not care about the guidance of constitutional rights, the U.S. law. He walks up and just forces this guy to try to give him his ID. And watch how it ends. Nothing crazy. Just ends up going, yeah, we didn't need him anyway. It's not the guy anyway. And just pressures him. I mean, again, had this guy bumped him the wrong way, had this guy done something with his tool that hit him, and where this goes. And all they're doing is just trying to fish. Your rights don't matter to them.
On the pole. We're working, man. Okay, I told you to put down the pole. I'm giving you an order to put down the pole.
Yeah.
So even that guy, in order to put down the pole, I'm working here. What do you want from me? Are you accusing me of a crime? Now realize the only thing they can do is engage with immigration. They always try to play this game where, your blinker or your car thing. That's not they're not allowed to legally do that, but they do anyway. Try to just get you to give you your ID. But that guy alone, your rights matter, guys. And if you're working on a work site and they just randomly come up to you for no reason, you don't have to comply unless they have a justifiable reason.
Hey, man, I'm not talking to you. I'm working. I'm working, bro. Where are you from, sir? Hey, I'm working. Can you get out of here? Hey, where are you from? You want to get out of here, bro?
Looking for somebody.
I don't care.
I'm looking for somebody. So right there, guys, they're just fishing. That's not legal. But these guys don't care as he covers his face, doesn't identify himself, and has no warrant. And in general context, they do not. And they're consistently doing that. As courts have called out, and they still don't care.
We're asking for you to identify yourself. Do you have an identification on you? I don't. You don't? No, sir. All right. What's your name? You need my name? Yes, sir. I'm a legal citizen, sir. You're a legal citizen? Yes, sir. Where were you born? That's all I need to tell you. Where were you born? Sir, can you please help? Let me work. I'm sitting still. Where were you born? Okay, let me go around you. Hi, where were you born? I was born here, bro. Let me work. Where at? Let me work. Where at?
Insane, guys. Nobody who believes in like what we would call American values, whether or not that's what the government believes in or not, would say that this aligns with what they think this country represents. You could just as easily frame this with, the different colored person with a different uniform in any of the countries they call bad guys, and Americans with loser minds. Oh, a despotic hellhole in their, but here it's okay because bad guy immigrant, even though the guy's not an immigrant, or rather illegally in this country. It's just, this is like, look, it's already happened to Americans more than once, by the way. But this is just like teetering on the edge of just becoming literally anybody who pushes back against them.
Where are you born? I'm doing some real work here, buddy. Awesome, man. Where were you born? I can't let this country drive. Hey, we're looking for somebody. Okay, well, go look for him. Go look for him and don't bother me. Where are you from? Don't talk to me. Okay, you can record all you want. Where are you from? You're from the United States? Look at them. Born here? You guys are speeding through here, bro. That's not us. Where are you born? United States? Oh, hey, easy. Oh, you're walking into me. I'm walking next to you.
Now he walks into him. He's the one that said, excuse me. So clearly he walked into him. They're just trying to gin up some kind of controversy.
Get off me, dog. Where were you born? Holy smokes. Huh? What's your name? You were born in the United States or no? What's your name? I'm asking you the question. Badge number. Let's go. Okay, that's fine.
Funny how he asked the badge number and you finally just bounces.
He's not our guy anyway.
Unmarked car, no names, no faces. He's not our guy anyway. So did he know that when he started? None of it matters because he broke the law in everything he did and very clearly did not care about that man's rights. This has to matter to people that actually know what this is for. If you care about anything Trump was even promising, that has to matter to you. Now, Aaron Melnick points out that, and that will Andrea Costello first, CoreCivic has sold two more detention centers to DHS in Minnesota and Kansas. Detention centers. Yeah, only immigrants, right? Who knows where this goes? I thought it was interesting to overlap this as a hypothetical. ICE has now spent over $2.2 billion in purchasing 4 private prisons from CoreCivic at a profit to the company of over $500 million. Of course, ICE will not actually operate these facilities. CoreCivic keeps the contracts to run these places for the foreseeable future. Now, I actually forgot. I wanted to follow up on what CoreCivic might have been connected to. But either way, the point is you're building this, and it's a private prisons run just for ICE. Seems, right now, they're faceless and unaccountable. Now you've outsourced a private run prison system for the unaccountable, faceless enforcement arm. Sure sounds like that's working in the direction for freedom, doesn't it? Now, Patriotic Blonde says, Trump now says journalists who leak information he deems incorrect will face long prison sentences. Welcome to 1984. Now realize it was a leak about something that's true, which is that they're completely diminished on their munitions. And he just hated that people talked about that. And of course, maybe there's some secret thing we don't know about, but he comes out and goes, you'll be, face long sentences for leaking. But realize that in many cases, leaking things is not a crime, especially when it's leaking something that is a crime. But that doesn't matter. You'll go to prison if I don't like what you're doing. Seems relevant, doesn't it? Now, interestingly, let's overlap this with the story that was, an old story, but we've talked about a long time ago during COVID-19, the CDC planned quarantine camps nationwide. So let me ask you something. What's the real material difference between that and what ICE is doing? The narrative. That's it. The justification, the stated purpose. So maybe, who knows where it goes. Or those buildings are used next time when Democrats come into power and they want to use these again, or whatever. The point is the government, guys, left, right, same damn thing. And realizing that all we're seeing is the building out of yet another thing just like this. So if you cared about this, you should care about that because it's simply just a utility that could be used however they see fit, whatever the next agenda is. Maybe we become people that start to fight back against some kind of Israel take over the country and suddenly they, however you want to frame this. Now, overlapping this with the flock direction, which will be, as somebody recently pointed out, and actually many people, Jason Bassler as well, the idea being that, well, hold on, we're having flock cameras put everywhere and we're pushing back against this. And those that support it are saying, well, criminals and so on. Well, then it's not that far of a logical jump to, another pandemic or the illusion of one. And suddenly there's lockdowns. And suddenly the flock cameras are used to say that you're out where you're not supposed to be. And simply, I saw a cartoon somebody made where it says, don't worry, they're just for criminals. And the bottom one says, well, during COVID, they called you a criminal if you got too close to somebody. And they're looking at each other. I mean, how do you ignore that? They said you were breaking the law. So suddenly you're now being called a criminal with a flock camera because you're doing something that is your right. It's not that hard to see, guys. So Orwell Day pointed this out and said this video today, he said, I found out that the person behind this pro-flock propaganda, which is just ridiculous, the Free Press, Barry Weiss. Surprise, surprise, right? It's almost like there's an interconnected point here.
Feel like there's some watch? That's the panic behind a new fear. Do you ever feel like there's some watch? That's the panic behind a new fear sweeping across America. People are freaked out about surveillance from our employers, our nanny cams, and our phones watching our every move. And right now, this anxiety is being taken out with electric saws and cans of spray paint on tools used by law enforcement to keep us all safe. The target? Flock safety cameras. In upstate New York, someone cut down a flock safety camera with an electric saw. In Oakland, California, another was covered in paint.
Yeah, that's 2 of the 100,000 that you might actually talk about. It's funny how they're almost downplaying the fact that that's happening so much. But anyway, that's not the point.
And in Idaho, someone rammed one with their truck. And in good old Florida, a man just sits in his lawn chair with a cardboard held up for the lens.
It's about 0.01% of the ones that have been taken down.
Since January, roughly 23 cities have canceled their contracts or shut off their flock camera over 4th Amendment.
Here.
There's even an open source intelligence website, DFlock, that's finding these cameras so people know exactly where to vandalize them. Here's what's actually under attack. In 2025 alone, the system helped locate 10,000 missing labels.
No, that comes from Flock, who makes that claim. And then in real world examples, you just simply can't duplicate those numbers. How funny is that? Anyway, you see where this goes. Good. You're all scared conspiracy theorists. Well, funny how that works out. Well, again, I guess it matters where the propaganda comes from. And you'll even like that even Twitter comes out and says, well, flock cameras scan and log every passing vehicle, not just suspected criminals storing plate model, as you know, because their entire thing is, but flock safety cameras aren't interested in you. Like, it's just lazy, guys. And it's their own information proves that that's a lie. But Israel propaganda will convince you flock cameras are okay. Maybe reflect on that for a second. Now, interestingly, as I pointed out when I did this show, Israel's infiltration of flock and AI surveillance, I pointed this guy out. I just saw this yesterday. Zoe Brown says, flock surveillance government guy, half decade working for APAC. Which, yeah, that matters. I mean, it's just more connection. This is a guy currently working for Flock as a senior director for public affairs and worked for full time for APAC until 2022. That's important. I just simply said, well, this is Shlomi Lior, algorithm and systems engineer for Flock. And he spent 7 years in the Israeli military intelligence before ending up with Flock, as I showed you on that show back on June 2026. But here, as you can see, it's got it right here, actually. Here's his account, Flock Safety. He is the algorithm systems engineer, which is very relevant. Algorithm AI side of it seems to be important. But then if you go down to the very bottom, of course, you don't get to see it unless you scroll all the way down, Israeli military intelligence. And by the way, if you want to go through the entire show, which I do, if you want to go through a show where I go through that, I go through plenty more than just that. I go through, and this is the one where we go into Signal Trace and Leonardo, which is packed with Israeli intelligence, or a company called SITE, S-I-T-E, in all capital, same thing. And all these, how they're all connected through all this, it's important. And there's plenty more, especially even today. Now, as Ramus 1234 points out, and we talked about this already as well, Axon, and I think on that one we go into, or maybe the next one. Actually, here, I'll grab this one too, in case you want to watch it. Oh, and funny enough, it's actually relevant to the ICE point we just made as well on this show. ICE has gone full-blown secret police, very obvious, and the Axon Flock bait and switch. Now, like I've said since then, and you can go into it entirely, even on the DFlock website, you can see right now, Flock still represents 84% of the entire market, guys. Motorola Solutions, Vigilant Solutions, which Trump also has stock in, 5%. Genentech is 2%. So all the other 72 is at 4%, and that includes Axon. So I still agree that a lot of counties and different places have been switching to Axon, but at the moment, it is still in very much the majority of flock and doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. So consider that. So as I pointed out in one of my recent shows, I'm not going to try to grab it, but it simply said, look, the real psyop is to try to get us to ignore all of this. Oh, I think I know the name. There it is. Which I really think is important because, as we evolve in understanding and kind of watch what's happening, I said flock, Axon, Vigilant Solutions, the real psyop is dividing us into allowing any of them, making us blink just long enough for this to happen or be fleshed out entirely anyway. Include those for you. Be at the bottom. Now, in that show, this one here where we go over the Axon bait and switch point, we go over the connection to flock, but also to Carbine, for previously Carbine 911. I hadn't seen this actually. Now, there's a lot of this kind of stuff out there, but I just thought this one was important for a specific reason. One of which was that map you're looking at right there, which is not crazy, but the connection, but I'll make it in a second. But thank you, Ramus, for sharing this. This is, as they write, and this is from Axon, the evolution of 911, Axon to Carbine. And remember that Axon is, the same kind of technological connections, Israel especially, but in general, the flock and surveillance dynamic. Here's the clip. And this is from their account. Now, why this is relevant is for a couple reasons, and I'm going to read something from Whitney in a second after this, is because what we're highlighting here is not just about 911 calls. It's not just about surveillance or even like the network of like location data, right? It's about the pre-crime element of what this creates and this invasive surveillance that through our own 911 call center, like infrastructure, not even just that you're calling 911. And that's an Israeli company tied directly to Israeli intelligence. That's insane. And it has been since for years I've been pointing that out. But now it's completely dovetailed with the flock infrastructure. It's not a coincidence, guys. This is building out different parts of the system, of the control grid that Catherine has been telling you is coming, if not already here. Oh, it's down here. Sorry. It's this one.
Every year, more than 240 million people call 911 in the United States. Moments when every second feels like forever. But the longest moment is the one waiting for help.
Well, I don't understand why, seeing as how, go ahead and do your due diligence on the odds, the statistics, the percentage of the time that the cops come and save you from the thing you called for. You'll be surprised to find that it's realistically in the single digits, if not lower, because it doesn't happen. Because ultimately, cops, if in real time, stop something, usually when it's happenstance, when it's coming across. The idea that you would call the cops when something's happening and they would show up and deal with it largely happens on like a kidnapping situation or whatever. Like the idea that it's rare, guys. Now, it's not to say that there's not value. I personally don't. I think it comes down to sort of an anarchistic perspective, just simply taking care of yourself and your family and those in your neighbors and taking care of yourself. Because the truth is, it's an illusion to think that they're going to come rescue you from evil criminals. The truth is, the argument is that the idea of them existing would diminish the possibility of it. But really, it comes down to just do you have a fence? Do you have protection? Do you have a dog? Do you have anything? At the end of the day, I think that's important to think about, is that this projection of you like needing 911 to help you, I just don't think that's the reality. I think that's the perception they frame it as, but the truth is quite different.
Your car can drive itself. Your watch can warn you before you're in danger. Your fridge can order milk. But when you call 911, the system built to send help still runs on decades-old technology, built for landlines, blind to video, and too slow.
See, what's funny is, when was this made? 9 months ago? And that's not even they've been using Carbine in this country for a long time. I mean, I've been talking about it for 5 years. Like, it's just funny that they 9 months ago made a video about how archaic system is in place, even though they're already using Carbine. So it's just always propaganda. It's always selling you on this fear-based moment of, you better hurry and get the Israeli tech because we're all going to die when the criminals come or the Muslims take over or whatever, when what's actually happening is quite different.
For a mobile world, this isn't just a miss. It's a mission critical gap, and we're closing it.
What's your emergency?
So, he went somewhere in that direction, but I didn't see.
For the first time, intelligence from the 911 call, from cameras, from sensors, from cell phones, all converge in real time.
Oh, okay. So it's not even about 911 call centers. It's about crime reduction. So wait a minute. So this turned into, relaying calls into a massive control grid surveillance database, almost like exactly what we've been worrying about for a very long time, like well before, like with Carbine, even when Whitney and I talked about this a long time ago. She wrote articles about it way before that. Literal, as I'll show you in a second. This is the pre-crime element that's building around you as we speak, as this AI dynamic builds in. Like, look at what's happening in Gaza, guys. They're using this to enforce. This is the same tech, the same people, the same agenda.
Powered by AI at every turn, instantly understood and shared across the Axon ecosystem. Chaos becomes clarity. Dispatchers, command, and first responders all see the same evolving picture instantly.
Oh, assuming it's accurate, though, right? But here's what's interesting, though. So, right, you got a push to switch to, at least, and rightly so, there was sort of a change to some degree, but to say, oh, it was going away from Flock and it's going to Axon. Well, maybe we just misread the situation and realized that Axon was just picking up some of the market, and ultimately it's a bigger part of this outside of the Flock cameras, right? Like Axon, the overlap with the drone dynamic and the surveillance and the mix with Carbine and the obvious, database system that they're building around it, which Flock requires, especially if we're going to be pushing back on Flock itself, and that becomes a focal point. Like I said before, they don't need Flock's database. They just need the infrastructure. They have their own database. So a lot of this ends up being sort of, head fakes to get us to jump at the wrong thing. That's why we just have to keep questioning everything and calling out what we see.
To bring help to those in need faster and keep those responding safer.
Call playing. The call came in at 11:15 and the RP says they saw a man with a gun around Main Street.
It just happened where somebody said they saw, I thought a kid had a gun, then a kid had a water bottle and they went out and shot him to death. That just happened. Yeah, that's how that works. Not to say that's every time, all the time, but what happens with this is you end up leading in. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's not even about it is what could go wrong, but it's about the violation of your rights. That's the point today. It's about this unconstitutional system rationalized by the idea that it might make you a little safer. Well, you know what I was saying for that? Those who might give up a little safety and a little, for a little safety for a little bit of, or excuse me, I'm mixing it up. Give up their rights for a little bit of safety deserve neither. Paraphrasing very quickly. Benjamin Franklin. The bottom line is that clearly you do not have, we don't even have the ability to give up your inherent rights. That's what's stupid about that. You can allow someone not to respect them. It's an inherent thing that exists whether or not you care to point to it. What we're talking about here, again,
call playing.
The point.
Command and first responders all see the same evolving picture instantly. To bring help to those in need. To bring help to those in need.
I just lost it. I'll keep it going.
Faster. And keep those responding safer.
Oh, I think that's what it was. Just simply look at what they're showing you. Drone enforcement, cameras, real-time surveillance. This is exactly what people are worried about. The real question is, are people willing to accept this for the illusion of safety? Because realistically, it's going to amount to the same point, guys, and it's only going to bring more danger to your life in its own way from the enforcement arm or lack of rights, or, at the end of the day, you give me my own safety, or rather, give me a place where I have to take care of myself with freedom. I'll take the danger. But not everyone's like that. Truly, there's a lot of people that want to be controlled, that want to be told what to do. I personally don't think that's the majority, but who knows?
Call playing. The call came in at 11:15 and the RP says they saw a man with a gun around Main Street.
And when it's over, Every word, every video, every transcript is already preserved in Axon evidence, flagged by AI.
Yeah, after they've absorbed your biometrics and translated that back to everybody, including Israel.
Ready for review. Closing the loop from call to courtroom.
And of course, in many cases, using your personal information, your social media, your biometrics, and your inner circles to be able to broaden this out into any group. You know, look at what the Trump administration is doing and what Biden would do to Democrat or to MAGA in the same way. The idea being that, like Kash Patel, well, you're here and you had this community group on Facebook, and therefore we see you as an organized cell, and so you guys' protest becomes terrorism. I mean, this is how this stuff is utilized. Yeah, and sure, it might stop the mugger over here if they happen to be on point, but that's irrelevant to what this actually amounts to.
The 911 call of tomorrow won't.
That's coming, guys. Whether it's the drones or whatever else, take out the personal element, this gets even more insane.
Just start a response, it will shape it. At every moment, from call to closure, we're saving seconds. And saving seconds saves lives.
I'm not sure if someone's asking if it's an ad on TV. I mean, you can see the video right here. It's from the YouTube channel I was just pointing to. The evolution of 911, Axon, and Carbine, right there. So what? Oh, let me open the comparison here is interesting. And again, this is not huge because what you're really seeing here in this picture is, you know, the infrastructure, the electric, you know, infrastructure is the right word for it. So but I just find it interesting to think about what they're highlighting right here, right? Which is Carbine 911 call center. And then here is the plot camera, or just the license plate reader, AI surveillance, biometric absorbing system. Find it to be very, very interestingly the same. So, I mean, it's not that profound. I mean, they are the same, right? But in case you haven't put that together, that's very clear right there. You know, that just it stands out. And realize that we're talking about a lot of rural areas. Like, there's a lot of places here that are not central, coastal. Like, look at how many cameras in some of these sort of rural type areas. Not, you know, in like middle of nowhere, but anyway, I just find it to be very relevant. Now, as Whitney Webb points out, I've read this before, in August 2025, she says, I've warned about the pre-crime push to stop mass shootings before they happen, right now being applied to immigration or whatever the new thing would be to push it. And she says, for years, especially from the first Trump administration. She says, I don't think it's a coincidence that this happens just as the full extent of the Epstein-Thiel Carbine relationship is revealed. Peter Thiel, Jeffrey Epstein, that's what's being used right now across this country. She says, I wrote about Epstein, Thiel, and Carbine, as well as Trump's previous pre-crime push after a spat in 2019 mass shootings, which then William Barr, who launched DOJ pre-crime program called DEEP, seemed to predict in an odd speech. Together in the same article, I'll point to in a second. She says, check it out below and don't fall for the latest tragedy being used to coerce you into signing away your remaining freedoms. That applies to an immigration argument, Tren de Aragua, whatever it may be, guys. Even if they are exactly what they say they are, the answer is never sign away your rights. Never. Now, here's an article from Times of Israel. U.S. public safety firm buys Israel's AI emergency response startup Carbine for $625 million. That's Axon, which you already know. Now, here is Whitney's article from 2019, as we've read before as well. How the CIA, Mossad, and the Epstein network are exploiting mass shootings to create an Orwellian nightmare. Now, understand this and realize that since then, it's only gotten worse. New narratives, new aims, but this is what you're seeing today. This, what she's highlighting in 2019, is what is now all around this country. It was ubiquitously connected to the flock cameras and Israel intelligence, and now the NDAA and all this stuff that's happening, right? So keep that in mind. As she writes, following the arrest and subsequent death in prison, if you believe that's what happened, of alleged child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, a little-known Israeli tech company, at the time anyway, began to receive increased publicity, but for all the wrong reasons. Not long after Epstein's arrest and his relationships and finances came under scrutiny, it was revealed that the Israeli company, Carbine 911, now just Carbine, had received substantial funding from Jeffrey Epstein, as well as Epstein's close associate, former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak. and Silicon Valley venture capitalist Peter Thiel. So literally this got started with Peter Thiel, technocrat, prime minister of Israel's government, Zionist government, and Jeffrey Epstein. And yet here it is, a foundational element of our control grid. It's literally, I just sure wish people could hear all this stuff. You know, Carbine 911, or simply Carbine today, develops all handling and identification capabilities for emergency response services in countries all around the world, not just the United States, but definitely including the United States, where it has already been implemented in several U.S. counties and partnered with major U.S. tech companies like Google. Way more since then. This is 2019. It specifically markets its product as a way of mitigating mass shootings in the United States without having to change existing U.S. gun laws. That's weird, right? Yet Carbine is no ordinary tech company, as it is deeply connected to the elite Israeli military intelligence division, Unit 8200, whose alumni often go on to create tech companies, as we've covered many times, as was written by Calcitrit, or what's the name of that platform? It's been, and that's stating directly from Israeli elements in the government that are just completely stating that the entire pipeline is about intelligence to creating companies and then running them afterward to continue the intelligence agenda. It's like very public. In fact, let me finish this and I'll play that clip again. So, who often go on to create tech companies, Carbine among them, that frequently maintain their ties to Israeli intelligence. And according to Israeli media reports, and former employees often blur the line between the service to Israel's defense intelligence apparatus and their commercial activity. In fact, let's just play it now, since perfect for that point right there, as I know you guys have seen it, for those that haven't.
They buy it from, or I think they were buying it from.
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no way being traced back to Israel, shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to our favor. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
Did you see any surprises in Gaza?
Surprises?
Yeah.
Like intelligence surprises?
Pages, walkie-talkies. Do you know how many equipment, treated equipment do we have in these countries? You don't. I do.
You mean you mean booby-trapped equipment?
Not only booby-trapped.
And spying.
Manipulated equipment. All right?
In which countries are you talking about?
All the countries that you can imagine.
Just always so relevant. I've played it many times. You know, just publicly stating, even if it's a lie, that they manipulate companies and manipulate technology. I just, and it's all right there. But finally, Candace played it on our show, and so people actually know more about it. But it's the same as anything else. It's like it takes one of those elements for this to actually reach the kind of people that have the ability to, wherewithal and resources and positions to do, just that's the whole point, though. There, what's funny is there's plenty of people in positions of potential influence and power who aren't necessarily dishonest or not necessarily, somebody who might be willing to take action should they recognize the problem or see what we see, and they just don't. Like, that's why plenty of doctors just kind of woke up to what happened during COVID. I'm not talking about the ones that keep playing us, but the ones that really just woke up to it. And we're like, now I see it. I can't believe I never saw that. Now, why didn't they see it before? All the evidence was there. All the information that we point to was already there. They just didn't see it. That's what sometimes just happens, right? And so that's important to think about. Now, continuing on this with the companies, it says, as this report will reveal, Carbine is but one of several Israeli tech companies marketing themselves as a technological solution to mass shootings that has direct ties to Israeli intelligence agencies. Now, the focal point's changed, right? The mass shootings point isn't the focus right now, but it's the same idea. What is it about? Immigrants, that's us. We can do that the best. What was it about? Whatever the current justification is, those companies step in to fill the role. It's like COVID. The narrative is one thing. It's about, like, for example, if it's digital IDs, well, it's a pathogen, or it's immigration, or it's whatever the current thing is, justifies the agenda. That's just always how this works. In each case, these companies' products are built in such a way that they can easily be used to illegally surveil the governments, institutions, and civilians that use them. That's currently the reality of this system that's built all the way through this country, or literally every other part that they've worked their way into. And that's including the AI stuff and the current government itself. And it says that's a troubling fact given that Unit 8200's documented prowess in surveillance as a means of obtaining blackmail. There you go. And Israel's history of using tech companies to aggressively spy on the U.S. government. It's like this, that's just the, I mean, Epstein was involved with building this network, guys. So you're watching, you just have this blackmail network running through this country. You wonder why our government can't do anything about it. This is further compounded by the fact that Unit 8200 linked tech companies have previously received U.S. government contracts to place backdoors in the U.S.'s entire telecommunications system, as well as into popular products of major American tech companies, including Google, Microsoft, Facebook, many of whose key managers and executives are now former Unit 8200 officers. I would argue Palantir is clearly central in this conversation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it no secret that placing Unit 8200 members in top positions in multinational tech companies is a deliberate policy, his statement, meant to ensure Israel's role as the dominant global cyber power, while also combating nonviolent boycott movements targeting Israel's violations of international law and stifling the United Nations criticism of Israeli government policy and military operations abroad. Of course, you point out the first part of it and you just hate Jews, is what you're told, right? Not that you're clearly highlighting that he just said it's a deliberate policy to place intelligence entities in the middle of companies, but so that's what you get the people that circle around and just go, you hate Jewish people. Well, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about intelligence of a foreign government manipulating U.S. policy. But you see, now you guys see the game, right? For a long time, people would be scared away by simply allegations of racism. Now, talking to switch topics a bit, let's talk about Fauci and the contempt conversation. One thing I wanted to get into today, because I want to make sure that we talk about what I think is theater here. And in no way should this be taken as defending Fauci. It's just not the reality. Now, what happened, if you didn't see it, went in front of Congress and he pled the fifth like 100 and something times. Now, that's his right. Everybody has constitutional rights, guys, everybody. And so the bottom line is, as I just wrote here, what's happening with Fauci is political theater. The part to remember, though, the government, that's how I see it. They chose to pardon him, chose to give him a presidential commendation, chose to let the statute of limitations run out. All this could have happened years ago. Could have happened before. I mean, this was obvious, and everyone was screaming about doing it before that time frame. So ask yourself why this only got into gear after that. I mean, this just seems blindly obvious to me. Now, it says Fauci. I wrote Fauci's a monster, but he has constitutional rights. That's simply a statement of fact. Do your due diligence. This won't succeed by design. That's what I believe. If they follow their own laws, which I guess is always the caveat to a group that doesn't care about the law. But my point is, I don't think Fauci is somebody they want to have. At the end of the day, Fauci, I mean, if Fauci gets held accountable, Trump is right there next to him. So is Biden. So I just don't think that's the case. I mean, plenty of them in this room or in this video in the Congress are absolutely just as culpable to most of what was involved. So here's the Hill Senate committee votes to hold Fauci in contempt. Also, I don't know if I said that. So they voted to hold him in contempt of Congress for pleading the fifth. So the point for me is whether or not this is actually going to matter. So first of all, let's just say they hold him accountable for contempt of Congress. And I'll go into what this means. Ultimately, based on what the documentation I can find, it's largely a misdemeanor. So what we're talking about, and even if not, you're like a year in jail, if not less, that ends up being a slap on the wrist for somebody like Fauci. This is the real point, is that if ultimately ends up being, you're guilty, but nothing happens, or he gets a slap on the wrist, some time served or whatever, that's not a win, guys. It's not a win. At the very least, if you take the win for his name being tarnished, like Tucker was just telling you, to me, that means nothing in the real sense, because he got away with murder. That's the point. So the Senate committee, chaired by Rand Paul, voted to refer Fauci to be held in contempt. That goes to the DOJ, is where he's sending it. Now, 8-5 was the vote. Holding a witness in contempt, he writes, is a serious thing. It should be rare, but the contempt power exists for precisely this circumstance. Oversight is not a courtesy this committee extends or a favor a former official grants us. It is a constitutional obligation. Interesting that he cites constitutional obligation when Fauci has the constitutional ability to say, I plead the fifth, because what they're trying to get from him is information that will obviously be used against him. And it should be. I agree with that. But then clearly, if we all, this is what it comes down to. It's like free speech. If you do not defend the free speech of the people that you despise, then you don't believe in free speech. Now, criminal referrals that come from committees usually go to the full Senate for a vote. But Rand Paul can also send it to DOJ, which is what he's saying he's going to do. Indicated last week he planned to move directly to DOJ. Now, I wonder what that means. Is it because people in Congress? I mean, here's the thing is I don't think either way this goes, it'll ultimately amount to something. And I think that going to the DOJ will end up in the same direction. I feel like this is meant to go nowhere. The referral is not a mandate. The DOJ will ultimately decide whether to take it up. So it may just languish there with nothing. They may just let it drift in the background by claiming we're going to get to it, we're reviewing the file or whatever, and it just never gets picked up again. Lawmakers are split along party lines as to whether Fauci retains constitutional protections in this situation, given that he received a pardon. So I'll address this next, but guys, this is basic. Your rights are inherent. They don't disappear based on certain circumstances with an asterisk. That's not how that works. The real question comes down to the fact that if he was pardoned, right, this is what this really means, but people are misinterpreting it. If he was pardoned, well, then he has no reason to believe that what he says could be used against him. That will be the real case. And then what they're going to say is, well, he has no reason to believe he's going to go to jail. So why would he plead the fifth if the whole point of the fifth is that you're not about self-incrimination? There's no reason to worry. But here's the thing. Rand Paul has been yelling about how he's going to be put to prison. So it's very obvious that he thinks that it might be used against him, even and around the things he's been pardoned for. And even if you argue it's just his interpretation, at the end of the day, he has a right to that if he feels he might incriminate himself. So it's going to be this game where they're trying to argue that ultimately his right doesn't apply. So doesn't that feel weirdly like trying to undermine constitutional rights like everything else we're dealing with? Just on a side point or maybe the whole point. I don't know. It says, where was this? Oh, yeah. And so, the pardon covers any offense, which I think is stupid in the first place. The idea that you can just blanket pardon an area is just the dumbest thing in the world. I said that then. I don't think it applies. So either way you look at it, guys, it's the same reality for claiming the fifth. But it says a federal pardon does not eliminate an individual's Fifth Amendment protection. We should have already known that if they still face a real and applicable risk of federal or state prosecution. Now, to be clear again, pardoned or not, your rights don't just disappear. What they're really getting into is whether that pardon removes the risk of potentially going to prison. So therefore, the Fifth Amendment specifically wouldn't apply. That's the point. You're going to find tons of people that don't understand that right now. Democratic members of the committee, including Peters and Senator Richard Blumenthal and Maggie Hassan, brought up numerous motions to table the resolution, all of which were voted down by a Republican majority. I thought that's worth pointing out, seeing as how right now you keep getting all this narrative about fighting the deep state or, whatever, or they won't let us. The Republicans control everything and have the ability to do that. So every time you see something happen, ultimately realize that they are, it's just, you're being played off. And if you believe the Republicans are somehow, doing everything you want, and it's always the Democrats that are hurting you. It's a game, always. Fauci's attorneys argued in a letter last week that Paul's stated aims of getting the former director, Fauci, imprisoned clash with his claims the doctor should speak freely without concern, potential backlash. That's just basic, guys. I mean, it's obvious the conversation is that Fauci's a criminal and going to jail. That's what this is all about. We want to find out what he did and hold him accountable. I mean, it's obvious that everybody in front of him, as he's pleading the fifth, we're like, you're going to be held accountable. So it's quite clear that he thinks, and it's clear that they want him to be held accountable. I mean, this is just basic stuff. In May, the senator called for Fauci to be indicted for what Paul claims was lying under oath about gain of function. He did, and he should be indicted. They didn't do that, though, did they? All the way back then. No, they waited until after everything had expired. Statute of limitations, he got the pardon, he got the commendation. Now they run it all through. I don't buy it. Saying Fauci did so in 2021. He did. He lied. Remember the EPPP research, and I didn't do gain of function. He lied, point blank. Right then, or the following week, they should have held him accountable. Not pretending to now, you understand. Now, for those who don't believe what I was saying, here is directly from Cornell School of Law, or Law School. Contempt of Congress. Contempt of Congress, similar to contempt of court, is when an individual intentionally disobeys or interferes with a congressional action. Congress has the power to restrain such individuals from interfering with its actions. So in this context, if, for example, they said the same thing, that you're required to come to Congress to answer these questions, and there was no, it was just somebody else, had nothing to do with any of it, but knew Fauci personally or whatever. That's a bad example, but basically had the legal responsibility to come, but truly had no real risk of going to jail, and they claim the fifth. Well, that's where this would apply. Or just said, or rather, in another context, just said, I'm not going to answer. I don't care about any of this. I'm not required to. Well, that's where this would come into play. Arguing, well, legally, you are required based on the, like lying to Congress is considered a crime, right? And so in this case, what the point I said earlier is where it really comes down to, is that he is at risk of that point, so that does clearly apply. And it says currently, actions for which individuals can be held in contempt of Congress are largely a matter of statutory law and focus mostly on when individuals refuse to appear or give testimony for a congressional investigation or hearing. So the testimony would apply if the first part didn't apply. And it says, as 2 USC 192 states, that any person who is summoned before Congress who willfully makes default or who, having appeared, refuses to answer any question pertinent to the question under inquiry shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, and may be subject to fine and imprisonment if convicted. A misdemeanor, guys. So let's just say this goes that way. Is that going to be enough for you? That Fauci gets a misdemeanor slap on the wrist, which I can guarantee will not amount to time in jail with what we're talking about? That'd be my opinion, but I believe that. Nobody thinks that's okay, but you're going to get the Benny Johnson types that will yell about how it all worked out because that's what their job is. The matter under congressional investigation, however, must be a subject over which Congress has legislative power before an uncooperative witness may be convicted of contempt. That's interesting. The U.S. Supreme Court in Quinn versus United States, who I have up here as you can look at as well, also recognized certain limitations on congressional power to investigate and summon individuals, namely that it, quote, cannot be used to inquire into private affairs unrelated to a valid legislative purpose. These are good just to remember for future, nor does it extend to an area in which Congress is forbidden to legislate. Similarly, the power to investigate must not be confused with any of the powers of law enforcement. Those powers are assigned under our Constitution to our executive and the judiciary. Still, further limitations on the power to investigate are found in the specific individual guarantees of the Bill of Rights, such as the Fifth Amendment's privilege against self-incrimination, which is in issue here. And here's the actual case. Says it right there. That's exactly the same statement. So all it's really saying is that in this exact case, ultimately your Fifth Amendment very much does apply. Now, like I said, what I was going back to is that with Fauci, the argument will be made or try to be made that he's under no risk of going to prison. So therefore that puts him in contempt. But that then, and even then, this is being relayed to the DOJ. So the question is, are they going to put all the time and effort into going after this, knowing that it's, any lawyer is going to look at this and go, it's not going to happen. Just like with Comey and all the rest of them. I mean, look, I even argue with Bolton. Like, let's watch where it ultimately goes. I'm willing to bet you that he really doesn't even serve time, even though he should. My point was all the rest of them, they just kept pressing it. And Letitia James, they went after like 4 times. They failed every time because they didn't have a case. They just wanted the wheels to look like they were turning. That's what I think anyway. Here's another example. This one's from recently. The Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. Specifically, the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides that no person, quote, shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Now, Congress is different than being in a court, right? But it's the same point. That ultimately the information can be used against you in the court. So you can claim the Fifth saying, I'm not going to incriminate myself for the same purposes. The privilege against self-incrimination may arise in a criminal case or, quote, whenever there is a realistic possibility, that's the point, that the privilege's holders answer to a question. Court, Congress, same point, can be used in any way to convict him of a crime. It has also been interpreted to protect the witness from compelled testimony that could be used against him in either federal or state criminal proceedings, which could very well apply here if some kind of a state court wants to go after him for something else. In practice, the privilege, quote, protects against any disclosures that the witness reasonably believes. Reasonably, which doesn't mean it's the truth, right? But they believe it based on Rand Paul's threats, for example, could be used, they reasonably believes it could be used in a criminal prosecution or could lead to other evidence that might be used. So that's where it all lies. They'll absolutely argue, which in a way almost backwardly proves that he's guilty, which he is, that ultimately if I'm forced to testify, it'll lead to other evidence, which opens up new crimes that aren't pardoned under Biden's thing. Like that's, I mean, trust me, This will not work unless they just don't care about law and just throw them in jail and don't care anyway, which honestly, for this person, not that I hope the law is broken, but I hope this person ends up in jail regardless. But the point is, guys, we have to care about constitutional rights, about the process in general. Otherwise, it'll turn around and be used against you, which it already is, which this is why I believe this is all theater. The privilege, quote, not only extends to answers that would in themselves support a conviction under the federal criminal statute, but likewise embraces those which would furnish a link in the chain of evidence needed to prosecute the claimant for a federal crime. That last sentence is the real point. So they'll find a connection that links to something. I mean, it's in a legal sense. My point would be any lawyer will tell you that he's in the right in the sense of not being in contempt for using that. But I want to reiterate, because I guarantee this will be used as somehow defending Fauci. This person is a monster and should be in prison. And had our government cared about actually holding him accountable, he'd already be in prison. So would Trump and Biden, by the way. The reality, though, even though they are the government, the reality is that they let this go until it would be impossible to go after. I mean, it's the same as anything else. It's the same as, historically, here's a good example, Clapper. The NSA is not spying on anybody. And they damn well knew he was lying. It got proven that he was lying. And then they waited until the statute of limitations ran out before they ever really addressed him. That's how that works, guys. They know what they're doing. It's frustrating. But watch as people misrepresent that in the new media that has usually no idea what it's talking about. Okay, so talking about the mRNA shot, by the way. So the same. So we're talking about Fauci being pardoned. Why? Because he, it depends on who you're talking to, but it was because of the COVID-19 illusion, guys. They lied to us. They sold us things, Trump and Biden included, that killed people. Now they just approved another mRNA shot, which we told you about repeatedly, by the way, and got yelled down for by certain people in the two-party illusion. FDA approves Moderna's mRNA flu vaccine. It is quite frustrating, though, that we could have been, August 2025, Trump's universal mRNA sleight of hand, long-planned universal vaccine, in which we point to as one possibility, the mRNA 1010, which is the new flu shot, the mFluxa, whatever it's called. Now, as far as I can tell, it's not universal, but understanding that it's mRNA opens that door for that being where they take it. See my point? But on top of that, we followed up again on June 19, 2026, Moderna's new mRNA flu shot. Right there, June 19th. So had you been watching this show, you were way ahead of the conversation on this point, like so many others. Surprise, surprise. It's almost like this show is valuable to you. So here's New York Times. The FDA on Wednesday approved the first mRNA flu vaccine, which is what we all told you. I told that it, and this isn't about like Trump or Biden. It is essentially for Trump, but that this was the direction it was going to go in, whether Trump was elected or Kamala, because this was the plan. And just if that shocks you, think about that for a second and realize that's why it shocks you, is because you thought he was different. And it's all the same, which is why we shouldn't go through the same cycle again, guys. Let's take a different path. Approve the first mRNA flu shot. Now, enabling the use of a technology, they write, that will make it easier to rapidly target a widely prevalent or particularly virulent strain of the virus, meaning that just like the COVID-19 illusion, they can just jump around with they'll put this shot out and then it'll be variants and changes and jumps around. It'll be the same thing. Not in every possible way, different spike, different protein, for example, but what we're talking about is the same things that lead to the same problems, the same nanoparticle dynamic, right? The lipid nanoparticle structure, specifically the mRNA that doesn't leave your body or that cycles through for longer than it should, the production of the antibodies that continue, or the idea that you have multiple types that cause antibody-dependent enhancement, or all the different things that we highlighted the system caused. In fact, hope this one comes up. It wasn't this one, I don't think. The point was the mRNA platform. Oh, I'll type in the mRNA. That'll do it. Oh, look at that. That's funny. RFK's universal flu vaccine platform. That's also relevant. Same thing, actually. Same general conversation. This is where, and we predicted that's where RFK was going to take this, even with mRNA. A lot of pushback to that, too. But let's do the mRNA platform, because the study, peer-reviewed study, found that the actual platform system was, there it is right there, Oh, no. There it is. Grab both these, actually. So much good content on this platform. And I mean that. Like, it's just really a lot of good content that goes back a while. The mRNA platform is dangerous to dual use technology. I agree with that right now, specifically the general sense of it. But the point was, that's weird, 8.6 and 6.8. The point was this one, specifically talking about the study, found that the platform, right, not the different antigen, different protein, but the platform itself was driving myocarditis. So if they keep it going and Moderna is using the same platform, then it'll cause the same problems. Which, by the way, guess what? One of the people in this study got pericarditis. Out of what, 50,000 or something? I mean, that alone should be enough. 150,000, but it's more than that. We'll get to it in a second. The approval of the vaccine called mFlusiva, which is manufactured by Moderna, follows a series of blows to mRNA research directed by RFK Jr., including the cancellation of 22 projects meant to develop vaccines with mRNA. As we told you, that was a head fake when it happened, because they didn't stop all of them. So they lied. They cut the big $500 million one, but guess what? They pumped it right into this direction, which ended up being mRNA anyway. And the rest of them, they kept going. That's why we include the self-amplifying point, which we've called out before. Wherever that is, 2025, that they leaned into self-amplifying under the guise of ending mRNA. That's what happened. And here we are even more clear with that today. So it says they canceled 22 projects meant to develop vaccines with mRNA through the government's BARDA. Initially, the FDA had refused to even review Moderna's application for approval earlier this year. Now, I can't tell if this is a change of personnel. I think it was Prasad. And like basically the point is either they pretended to not want it, so we stopped paying attention, or somebody who didn't want it, people have left, right? People that was there before. I forget the couple that already left. Maybe they were the ones that really didn't want it. They actually didn't want it. And they left because they found out the team actually was secretly going in mRNA anyway. Either way you look at it, they said, we don't want that. Refused to even review it, but then quickly reversed course after public outcry, whatever that means. So they pretended to not want it and then did it, or however you want to frame that. The company said it expected to have the vaccine ready for the 2026 respiratory virus season. Moderna's chief executive said this approval also reflects the ongoing potential of our mRNA platform to help address public health challenges through continued scientific innovation. Well, it's the same platform, the plug-and-play platform that we all talked about, the same platform that they then removed from their website, the video that they had on YouTube that YouTube itself censored somehow. I've gone through all this. And what does it show you? The horrifying thing that they tried to hide after the fact. Like the whole system that shows you how crazy this is. And the fact that I can prove to you based on their own time frame that I still have archived, that they've removed, that shows you within a matter of days they already had the vaccine produced, that ultimately was not isolated by the proving statement of the people that eventually claimed they did, which even then you can prove they didn't. For those that went through this with me, you know what I just said. You know all the information before. But either way, the point is that this platform is the same problematic thing that Moderna put out in the very beginning that hasn't really changed. mRNA technology instructs the body to produce a fragment of a virus that then sets off the body's immune response. So they want you to think, aside from all the stuff that you know, which is that this absolutely continues to produce this in your body that has all kinds of terrible side effects. I mean, this whole thing is not in your interest. And that's what's so crazy about it, is that seems to be pretty broadly accepted now by most people. Even the Democrats who have quietly stopped taking the shots, even the so-called seventh booster that 20% of even healthcare decided to take, even though the system was saying you need it, just like all the ones before it. Hotez was pulling his hair out, going, you need to take the shot. Seventh shot's important for the whole thing to come together. And even only 20% took it of the healthcare industry. We've all been played, guys. As a vaccine activist in 2021, it says, Kennedy, RFK Jr., had petitioned the FDA to pull mRNA vaccines off the market 6 months after the rollout. Of course, that's before he was in power and he leaned into them. Moderna has said that the faster new approach, great, it's a faster new and faster forming killing shot. A new approach will enable a shift away from the current process of focusing on one flu strain for an entire hemisphere each season and allow each nation to pick its best option. Cool. So now we've got vying different antibody-producing shots, mRNA platforms that are different. I mean, the whole thing causes, it seems, more of the problem that we saw in the first time. The idea that you now have different platforms like, think about Europe, where you've got countries that are right next to each other, and now you have different shots. They'll be jumping around, taking different shots that produce different antibodies. It causes the same problem. It will allow us to rapidly adjust to rapidly emerging new flu strains, a capacity we have not had before, they say. Well, remember, on record, you have Fauci and plenty of others saying, well, if you make a shot and it gives you the wrong antibody, well, you have a bad response. So you're guessing. Now you got multiple antibodies in different places. That's the whole reason the entire science, if you want to call it that, behind this whole thing hasn't been functioning properly to begin with. It's all, I mean, this is where you get into the real understanding of the whole broken thing that this entire industry is. The company enrolled nearly 41,000 people. Less than I thought. 41,000. That's a small, tiny thing for what it used to be. And it says 50 to 64. In a major study that found that the vaccine was effective, they said, but had, get this, more side effects than the vaccine with other technology. So first of all, realize that despite the claims of RFK Jr. about the gold standard, which I've already proven 3 different times that they didn't follow, which means they aren't using placebos, saline, they're using other vaccines, and they just, even though he promised the world, like food dyes, like, go down the list, everything else they promised, COVID shots, they're still doing. Here's another example where they used another vaccine to compare to this shot. And this one had more side effects, which means it would have been way worse if they compared it to an actual saline, which is why they do that. In basically in a major study that found the vaccine was effective, but had more side effects than a vaccine manufactured with older technology. In the study, about 21,000 people took the Moderna vaccine, and about the same number took the competitor vaccine. See, it's as if they try to pretend we know this is what they do. We know this is safe technology, so we're just going to compare it to the other safe one. Neither of them are. And it says within 6 months, 411 of the Moderna recipients got the flu. So just so you understand, even 411 of them got the thing that's supposed to help them not get, by the way, which is insane to me, because I don't know, who are you talking about getting sick randomly in the environment, or are you getting sick from the shot? They'll never want to tell you that that's what's happening, but that does happen. And it says compared to 557 of those who took the other flu shot, who also got the flu, by the way, that translates to a relative efficacy of about 27%. Are we still doing this? Guys, are we literally? Yes. Do we really have to play the clip again? Apparently we do.
And you have the right to know the potential benefit of any intervention. For example, Pfizer reported that its vaccine shows a 95% efficacy. That sounds like it protects you 95% of the time, right? But that's not actually what that number means. That 95% refers to the relative risk reduction, but it doesn't tell you how much your overall risk is reduced by vaccination. For that, we need absolute risk reduction. In the Pfizer trial, 8 out of 18,198 people who were given the vaccine developed COVID-19. In the unvaccinated placebo group, 162 people got it, which means that even without the vaccine, the risk of contracting COVID-19 was extremely low.
Similar, by the way, in cases with the flu or anything else.
At zero.
I mean, COVID was way, way less in this regard, but it's the same kind of blown up numbers for most everything.
0.88%, which the vaccine then reduced to 0.04%. So the net benefit, or the absolute risk reduction that you're being offered with a Pfizer vaccine, is 0.84%. That 95% number, that refers to the relative difference between 0.88 and 0.04%.
Now that's what we're dealing with right now. Right now, in the FSC, the same point, relative. So what they're doing is they're taking what they claim is the efficacy of the first one and what they claim is the efficacy of the second one, and then saying, look at this difference. This one is 95% or whatever the number. I'll go back to in a second. But in reality, it's not. It's only the difference between the two. And if you're talking about a small number, well, if you're looking at absolute, it would be very different. It's a game. It's a game of numbers. It's what they do.
4%. That's what they call 95% relative risk reduction. And relative risk reduction is well known to be a misleading number, which is why the FDA recommends using absolute risk reduction instead.
And yet they don't.
Which begs the question, how many people would have chosen to take the COVID-19 vaccines had they understood that they offered less than 1% benefit?
Yeah, probably nobody, guys. And that's why they lie to you. That's how this works. So back to the point. It says that translated to a relative efficacy of 27%. So imagine what that goes down to. 27% at relative efficacy probably goes down to 0.0 something percent when you're comparing the two. That's the real point. It says, but those taking the Moderna shot reported more side effects. More. Nearly 2/3 reported, and it's always, if you remember COVID-19, wildly downplayed, because what happens is they find people that get super ill super quick and they shoot them off and say, well, it couldn't have been the vaccine. It happened too fast, even though it very well could have. Or people that get, something else where they say, oh, it's a carryover from something with their family line, whatever. They have ways they just, or people that get sick and they shove them off the course for any number of reasons. Plenty of that happened during COVID. Now, 2/3 reported injection site pain. 2/3. I still find it insane that we pretend like that's normal. 45% reported fatigue. 38% reported headache. Rates about twice as much, 2 times greater than those of the competitor. So you're getting twice as many side effects. And it says 3-day hospitalization in one case, a case of perimyocarditis. So right there, what you're talking about, if that's even accurate, which I almost guarantee it's not, you're talking about 1 out of 41,000. Excuse me, 1 out of 21,000. Do the math. Do you want that statistic? Do you want that possible heart problem for a flu shot? I mean, my God, it's just this insane that we even rationalize this. And it says the FDA's initial refusal to review the Moderna vaccine was a highly unusual move toward an established company that conducted a large and generally positive clinical trial. Hold on a second. You literally just wrote up here that they had more negative side effects than the other shot. And you go on to call that a positive clinical trial in the next paragraph. Now, that's either them just playing their role as a propaganda platform, or they somehow actually think that that's a positive outcome in the broken, dangerous vaccine world we live in. Yeah, I don't know which one makes more sense. The reality, guys, is that just one heart problem out of 21,000. Do the math when it comes to everybody in this country. Somebody do the math for me. I just didn't do it today. I don't have a calculator in front of me. The idea that's insane amount of people that will get heart problems based on their numbers. And I can almost guarantee that it's more than that, especially since you have that many people. 45% of the people, or more than that even, well, there's, half the people have some kind of a problem, if not more. I just find it to be insane. Truly. And then we're not even getting into the deeper reality of this, just what they state. Remember what they stated about COVID-19 shots? Dr. Prasad's chief criticism of Moderna's flu vaccine application was that it compared the company's vaccine with one made by GlaxoSmithKline, that it is not considered the best in class. So you literally took a bad shot so that this one would look better. Tell me again about that gold standard, RFK Jr., about the placebo, saline. Such a tactic, in Dr. Prasad's view, was meant to skew the results. So here's my point. Prasad, whatever you think about him, clearly didn't want this and said, we're not even reviewing that. Then, now I forget actually, is he still in the administration? Let me know. I'm forgetting which one actually left. My point is, whatever happened, somebody overruled him. And if he did leave, it's because, in my opinion, that this is being pushed forward. That's what I would believe anyway. Let me know in the chat. Actually, I'm curious. I forget which one, because I know that because that's what's so crazy about this. So many people in this administration have just dropped off and left, which is not that crazy. The last one was the same kind of way. So included those. So here, this is Toby Rogers who put this out and says, we got played. We talked about her, actually. Fauci was yelled at in the Senate. Then they turned around and approved the COVID shot pusher, Eric Schwartz, as CDC director. He's right. And the FDA approved the mRNA shot. So he's going, we were played, right? I mean, I get it. Not everybody sees what we see. But my point was, to be fair, this was clear from day one, right? I mean, you could point to the Stargate platform. You could point to the self-amplifying link that I include. So it's not an attack. I mean, not everybody can see it. My point is just, let's be clear, guys. It's important to look back with clarity. It was there. It was there from the beginning. If you just cared to look at it and stop listening to what politicians said they were doing, as opposed to what they were actually doing. Now, again, you would have known about all this back in 2025. About the flu shot direction, the universal shot that's going in, the continuing of the COVID shots, if you follow this platform. Just demonstrating our value. Got it today. Moderna's new mRNA flu shot. June. Oh, and this was the one we were showing, Moderna's mRNA flu vaccine backed by FDA advisors. Me and Derek both talked about this. Derek and I both talked about this and got a lot of, like, you can just look at the tweets. People were like, you're so stupid. Not that we didn't know. The point was, this seems like this is their, well, the point I made at the time was, well, the FDA advisors aren't necessarily representative of the administration, but I do believe that's where it's going. And we turned out to be correct. And then let's not forget, in June 13th, a few days later, over $1 billion to Pfizer for new COVID shots. So we have Moderna coming out for flu shot. You have Pfizer right now working on 2 new COVID shots, one for adults, one for kids. That's on top of the current Comirnaty shot they're still giving and the self-amplifying ones they're currently working on. Clearly, they ended COVID-19 mRNA shots, right, guys? Clearly, based evidenced by the 5 ones they're working on. Now, here is the shot itself. And this is the mRNA 1010 we talked about, compared with a licensed influenza vaccine. Just continue to think that's insane, just in case you want to see it directly on their own website. Oh, and this was from March 2nd. Oops, don't go. There we go. Sorry, I almost refreshed the page. FDA accepts Moderna's mRNA 101 influenza vaccine application, March 2nd. And I want to point out, remember what it said on the COVID shot that we got all this pushback for at the time? Investigational influenza vaccine. So yet again, here we are with an experiment, because that's what that means, guys. And they tried to lie about it then, and we proved it then. And it still says that, experimental, investigational. So here we are with another experiment being given to your family, to your loved ones. Time to wake up. Now, at the same time, what just happened in the military? Pentagon restores mandatory flu shots for all recruits amid boot camp outbreak. So, however you read this, guys, where it's RFK or Trump or anybody else, they're either not allowed to stop this or don't actually care. And I'll include the article we go over, Amplitude Therapeutics, and I forget the other name, that, the self-amplifying mRNA shots are in the works. But it's been working for a long time. And then Toby Rogers included a study, or this is just a link to the vaccine injury post, but he talks about the shedding. And he goes, people who get the mRNA, COVID, and flu shots are going to shed and make everyone around them sick. mRNA vaccinated people are vectors of man-made disease. The rest of us are going to have to take an mRNA vaccine injury treatment protocol prophylactically. Now, you can decide if he's accurate about that. Here's the link if you want to check it out. I just don't want to advocate for that. I'm not, who knows what, you can look for yourself. But I want to just highlight again, this is something that is it's not new. There's new studies being pointed to, acting like it just got proven, some of the McCullough-connected elements. But I think that this has been very clear, and hopefully you agree with me. Going back to the beginning, this is 2021, COVID vaccine shedding data, 2021. And these aren't and some of them at the early parts were my thoughts, but the science has been very clear. Dr. Luigi Warren and plenty of others we actually pointed out. I just forgot that name earlier. Let me see if that pops up. Let's see. I don't think so. Luigi. No. Is that how you spell Luigi? Anyway, it used to pop up when I searched for his name, but you guys remember, he was the expert on it. And he came out and said, well, yes, it looks like it does shed, and clearly. And then he said, but it's not enough to actually hurt because it's only the one. And then we proved that it wasn't, that it continued to shed and it continued to make more. And so the point is, the evidence became undeniable, that even from the experts, it became clear that the spike protein, because it was making more than one and circulated your blood, it continues to. In fact, on that too, this one, there we go. Oh, that's not it. Shoot. Man, nothing's popping up for me anymore. Red Cross used to come up too. Shoot. If somebody has that link, please send it to me, because that's that one I used to bring up, showing the Red Cross continuing to lie about the shot shed exactly the same way that it circulated your bloodstream. Shoot. Oh, well, it's been so long since that I don't see him anymore. But anyway, let's continue. Shedding. Here it is in 2021 as well. Spike protein shedding. In fact, this might even have it, but no, not popping up. This is 2021 April. COVID vaccine shedding. Don't shed on me. Here's one from 2025. AstraZeneca's flu mist shedding. The other one that they were supporting. Okay, now just to finish this segment, Here's Ben Shapiro coming out and saying this, Sean Davis highlights Ben Shapiro promoting this in 2020, simply saying, no matter how much you hate Trump, if you like the country, you should be rooting for Trump to listen to Fauci. Well, that aged well, didn't it? And Sean Davis says, all-time classic. Ben Shapiro comes in and says, this was the only time that Tucker was visiting Mar-a-Lago or reportedly begging Trump to put an end to the lockdown. I oppose lockdowns and touts, just whatever, trying to defend what he said there. Not going to work. Luke Rudowski comes in and says, now, I'm not hounding him. It keeps popping up in my feed because we talked about it, but I'm going to call it out when I see it. He says, you told everyone to get the vaccine, the consequences of which are very severe for a lot of people. So I simply said, okay, well, you supported the man who created it and still pushes it. The consequences of which are very severe for a lot of people. I'm just making a point, right? Which is, I got it done here. I said, I was just making a point, right? It wasn't about, that, and I think we go on to discuss it. He said, keyword is supported, as if, he doesn't anymore. And I said, that's fair, but literally anyone was not hypocritically virtue signaling to Ben Shapiro about something he himself has done. Like, that's why I called it out, because we have to be honest about the fact that what you're doing is trying to stand underneath Ben, who is a much bigger culprit, and going, you did the thing. Well, to be fair, you did it too, right? I mean, like that's just, I feel like it's a fair thing to do right there to make sure. Here's actually the reason I did this, is because I think right now there's a lot of people in this middle ground who are very kind of going through the motions about this. Hey, what do you think of this? Oh, look at this. Maybe we should go. It's not, in my opinion, it's not. Anyway, I think what's happening is you've got a lot of people like this who are trying to play into this new wherever we're going and trying to restate. I look at it a lot of like the people that kind of were on the tail end of COVID that came in at the end acting like they're the ones that broke the story. Or people that are now suddenly 9/11 experts who barely ever talked about it, or suddenly, it's like, that's what I feel happening with a lot of this stuff again. So I just feel like it's worthy of calling it out. Look, you want to call out something I've made a mistake on or that I was wrong about, I welcome it. Bring it on. So that's why I think it's important that we have that going on, but it doesn't have to be snipey. That's what I think the whole thing with a lot of this fake, Candace and Fuentes and all this stuff is sort of just like about like they become the story, not necessarily about them being a part of the coverage of it, right? But let me see where we are on time here, about 2.5. Okay, I think I'm going to go through this, but we already pretty much did. There's a lot to get into in this, but we might just end up going over it for the most part. But this is what got my mind into this again today. So we recently covered this. House approves Israeli-U.S. military merger. That was the NDAA part of it. Last I checked, the Senate hasn't done it yet. Major U.S. war crimes in Iran, and of course, Trump's new gain of function. That's how I framed this. And I do agree with this, and it wasn't just about this one point. So again, the same point applies today. It's not saying this is exactly that, but this is this similar direction and similar ways that overlap with that kind of playing God part of this. And I very much stand by that. We're talking about viruses that infect bacteria and then are used for multiple things. And that's the bacteriophage or it was bacteriophage or the phage bacteria system. They're synonymous. And so what I covered it in this. We also covered the RFK lying about ending gain of function for the second time recently. And then I'll go over that in a second. We went back to it. Now, this comes out after we just talked about this. And I had just kind of randomly, I forget how, I think somebody sent it to me. I forget how I came across this. Probably Angela. And I saw this topic and I thought, well, that's pretty strange. Like, it's a weird thing. And it was about virus infecting thing. It just sounded very similar, right? And so I dove into this and I was kind of shocked by what I found. And that was on the 23rd of July. So now this comes out. Artificial intelligence used to design brand new viruses. So there's multiple things in that. One of which is what we've talked about a long time, which is using AI to create vaccines and gain like virus, all kinds of horrible things, which are all we all know is in that same direction. So what I found interesting, this is actually about the system I discussed. It says artificial intelligence has been used to design brand new viruses that are fully functional and can replicate in the laboratory. So tell me that's not exactly what we were worried about. Now it says it is the first time whole genomes have been successfully designed by AI. That's terrifying. The resulting 16 novel viruses were created to infect bacteria that they say pose no threat to people. Well, I disagree based on any number of other peer-reviewed science studies that I'll show you. The breakthrough has been labeled a very significant turning point in science that could unlock a new era for treating disease. Now, where this largely comes from, and this is what's so frustrating to me, is that antibiotics are what this is currently largely being framed as filling the role of. And the only reason that's necessary is because they so grossly overuse antibiotics, they've created a whole world of multi-drug resistant and problems, bacteria, viruses. And so what happens is that now that's becoming a problem. Well, they shift. And the reason, by the way, for the longest time, it's not that new. This whole phage bacteria overlap has been something that's been there. People argue is safer, but they haven't because antibiotics are the thing to use. And so now that it's becoming so, I mean, people have been talking about antibiotic resistant things for so long. Like it's been a problem on the radar forever, and they just don't care because corporate interests seem to run the day and for a long time. And so now, because they can't seem to get away from that and they see the problem not going away, this is the new direction. So I just hate the idea of that they just drive that thing into the ground, destroy something that was working and still could be probably more beneficial than this outside of playing God. And now they just need to manipulate this into being something that will work because of their failed, rather they're what's the way to frame that? Something they knew was failing that they could have stopped, but they kept going anyway because money, even though like the short-sightedness is disastrous. And it goes for everything they're doing, like in a real sense. Like you look at the stuff they do today, it's just crazy. But continuing, the resulting 16 novel viruses, doesn't this feel exactly like what we were just going through? Were created to infect bacteria that pose no threat to people, so we're told. The breakthrough has been labeled a very significant point in science that unlocked new era for disease, but experts have also warned AI-designed viruses raise urgent safety security concerns. Cool, so we're right back in the swing of things, it seems. This is a next step in the complexity that's designable by generative AI. So basically telling you that we're going to get to a point to where these things can just be literally designed. And that's what we've been worried about. This is the first time generative AI has been used to design a complete genome. It's something that can replicate and have other functions inside cells. See, this is terrifying in its own direction, even beyond the phage bacteria system. You're talking about AI creating living things. It's something that can replicate and have other functions inside cells. And on top of that, things that can be wildly manipulative. This was new territory for us, Brian High says at Stanford. Technology works similarly to large language models like ChatGPT. Oh, that makes me feel better. In this instance, AI models known as Evo 1 and Evo 2 predict the language of life rather than words. Unnerving. The AI models were trained on genetic codes from viruses, bacteria, plants, people. They were then refined to produce a type of virus known as a bacteriophage. Phage. I want to put an N there for some reason. Bacteriophage, Phage, which infect only specific species of bacteria. Unless something goes awry, unless something genetically modified acts a way you don't expect, because that's never happened before, right? The Stanford researchers picked the most promising 302 AI designs and synthesized them in a lab. Of these, 16 proved effective at killing E. coli bacteria. Developing new phage bacteria could lead to new ways of treating infections that have become resistant to antibiotics. And why have they become resistant to antibiotics? Because you guys are completely, because the powerful don't care about what they're doing to the world when they're immediately making a profit. Look at every industry. But the breakthrough also points to the ability of AI to design new biology that goes beyond the natural world. Full stop. Don't let it happen. Too late. What is known as synthetic biology, but concerns have already been raised that the same technology could be used maliciously to create new diseases. Okay, then why are we letting that happen? Because the powerful don't care. They're the same ones writing this article to you, giving you the downside while gaslighting you into accepting it. In a commentary accompanying the publication in the journal Science, Dr. Thomas Inglesby and Dr. Moritz Hankey from the Center for Health Security at Johns Hopkins University, where all the good stuff comes from, that the findings raise, quote, urgent biosafety and biosecurity questions. See, here's the thing as always. These things raise concerns and questions, and there's dangers and unknowns, and yet they rush into it. for their own interests, probably funded by some company that's desperately needing a solution to resistant drugs. It's like, that's where this comes from. They said it was no longer a question of whether generative viral genome designs will exist, but whether it can be used without enabling serious harm. Oh, cool. I'm glad we just jumped into that. So it's not whether or not, it's hoping this doesn't go awry while we're in the middle of it. I mean, have we not learned from this, guys? This is the point. They don't care. We learned because we saw. They knew and didn't care, and they still don't care now. For example, they said new viruses with potential to cause disease should not be pursued. Okay. So the government will swear we're not focusing on the dangerous ones, like their lie of gain of function. But the point becomes one of two things. What if they lied? And two, what if anybody else chooses to pick up this thing and do bad things with it? The researchers themselves took steps to maximize safety. They excluded viruses that could infect complex organisms from the training database, performed the research on phage rather than viruses that infect people, and it all took place in a secure laboratory. Well, guess in that one example, we hope that they're not lying to us and that would all work out. Hai argued even existing safeguards go a long way towards ensuring that the technology is used for good, meaning that it's simple with your safeguards or not, it could be used for bad. That's just a basic understanding of the English language. Professor Mark Gould from the synthetic biology lab at Pompeu Fabra University in Spain said that the study was a very significant turning point because for the, quote, first time in history, we are beginning to design biology on a computer. He said it, quote, allows us to dream of exciting possibilities for tackling humanity's greatest challenges, such as developing phages to tackle disease, enzymes to treat genetic disorders, and antibodies that could be used in immunotherapy. Yeah, I mean, this is the pie in the sky possibility. Like, it's great. But see, that's not what it always goes to. It becomes commodified, it becomes monetized, and it becomes abused. Like every other thing the U.S. government has ever touched. And it's always how this goes. And I hate to say it like that, guys, but look. The reality is that business and everything else and interest and the people that are currently in charge today, look at what they're doing. The idea that it will only, and see, the scientist himself is like, this will be great. We can do this. We can save that. But they're not the ones that decide how this gets applied. Quote, the significance extends far beyond phages. It suggests that genome language models are beginning to learn the design principles encoded by evolution, opening the door to AI-assisted genome writing. God only knows what these people will do with that. Now, live science back on October 6, 2025. AI can now be used to design brand new viruses. Can we stop it from making the next devastating bioweapon? Sure, we can write the article stating that, but I guess we'll all just hold our breath and hope they don't. And again, that's my point about this. That's what I saw in this and more. Now, just, I guess, to focus on some of the important parts. Again, we talked about RFK lying about this. Now, back in 2024, interestingly, this connects back with Fauci and the shot and everything else. We talked about gain of function is back. Now, this is under Biden, even though it was ongoing under Trump and Bush and Obama before them. The point is, this is the video that I was highlighting. Gain of function research on H5N1. This is from 13 years ago. Look who we're looking at right there. That's Dr. Fauci sitting right there, 2012. My point in showing you this is simply that this is something that has been ongoing for a very long time. Fauci's been building the same direction. I just want to include that. I just thought it was interesting. Now, gain of function head fake on 2025. That was an important one as well, talking about the lie of them pretending to stop it. We'll include this as well, talking about the gain of function direction for the kind of, some of it was building proteins to do whatever. This is the magnetoferritin protein shot. That's one of the universal flu directions where they use ferritin nanoparticles, and which peer-reviewed science has shown how that can then be used from outside sources to manipulate plenty of processes in your body. Trump, and this is just, I just include because I think it's crazy. Donald Trump rolls out the AI biomedical control grid backed by Israel and the deep state. Just a title to catch people in the early part of the Trump administration. Otherwise known as Stargate, as Derek wrote about. Stargate. Trump partnered with technocrats to promote mRNA injections, AI, and transhumanism. Funny how it's all coming together right in front of you. Almost like it was all a plan. Now, this one's interesting. Now, this is one of the reasons the title is the way it was today. Evolution, name it from the platform, Oxford Academic, 2018. Gain of function experiments with bacteriophage lambda uncover residues under diversifying selection in nature. It says we studied a model virus, bacteriophage, that repeatedly evolves to exploit a new host receptor under typical laboratory conditions. Now, I want to stress that what we're really talking about here is using bacteriophage in the process of gain of function. But my point is simply highlighting that there's an overlap to this. And then we can get into the points I've shown, including my last show, that show you that there's concerns, very clear risks about the general direction in and of itself. But I just found it incredibly interesting to see that it's literally actually used in the process of this experimentation. And it says here, we demonstrate that 2 residues of the J protein are required for the new function. And that's the bacteriophage, that's the little symbol they're using. And it says, in natural bacteriophage variants, these amino acid sites are highly diverse and evolve at high rates. Insertions and deletions at these locations are associated with phylogenetic patterns indicative of ecological diversification. Our results show that viral evolution in the laboratory mirrors that in nature, and that laboratory experiments can be coupled with protein sequence analysis to identify the causes of viral evolution in the real world. Gain of function experiments with bacteriophage. So briefly, here's one from World Health Organization, and just simply says, can there be dangers, right? And it says, nonetheless, there are some risks because like antibiotics, phages can cause the release of endotoxins, toxic substances from bacterial cell walls, leading to inflammatory responses, especially in large-scale infections. Further evidence from clinical studies and monitoring are needed before phages can become widely available, which the question is that happening? Or is it like the COVID direction, mRNA, where they just jammed it in before we even knew what was going on? The bottom line for me is that this is just one. We're going to go through more, but there are clear damn risks. And I'm not even suggesting they're as dangerous as some of the most extreme we've talked about, but it's about whether or not this is being properly vetted or this is just what they see as their next interest. Bacteria can develop resistance to phages, just like they can develop resistance to antibiotics. So how long until we have to deal with the phage-resistant drugs and then we'd have nowhere to go? You know, it's like this just... They don't seem to have any foresight. But phage-resistant bacteria are often less harmful. Okay. Like many often, meaning not all the time, like many personalized medicines, phages currently struggle to meet regulations designed for conventional medicines produced to a single formulation. You know why? Because this is your tailor-designed drug dynamic. See, the problem with this, or possibly the solution, as some people look at it, is that this needs to be tailored individually to what you can deal with and what you're dealing with in regard to the issue. It's very clear. And so the point becomes, how do you ever test for the efficacy? How do you ever see? And this is the problem, is that that's right now, as you read into this, you find that ultimately, if it's specific to the person and the situation, that ultimately there's no real way to prove that it actually is safe in the long-term sense, because they're different. Or effective even though it seems in many cases they're arguing that they are, or arguing they're safe, there seems to be a lot of underlying, but we really don't know by the scientists looking at what they're claiming is safe. Further evidence from clinical studies and monitoring are needed before phages can become widely available for therapeutic uses. The path to regulatory approval for the therapy needs to be addressed due to their biological nature and the need for personalized therapy approaches. Regulators may consider setting clinical trials and manufacturing standards for phages that reflect their unique characteristics and specify for each patient treated. Well, that's not going to happen. They're going to make this a one-size-fits-all like they do with everything. 2017, bacteriophages are potential new mammalian pathogens, or as potential new pathogens themselves. It says there was an increase in markers of impaired gut permeability. Now, this seems to be a real focus, this issue of gut permeability and what they can do in specifically the stomach, such as the lactose mannitol ratio, plasma endotoxin concentrations, and serum levels of inflammation-related cytokines. Very similar to something related with COVID-19, the shots rather. These findings provide novel insights into the role of bacteriophages as potentially pathogenic for mammals, that's you, and their possible implications in the development of diseases associated with increased intestinal permeability. That's actually the phrase they use, the intestinal permeability. I believe that was it on this. There's more, the new studies go over it more. 2024, bacteriophages, dangerous. I guess we'll just go through it. Bacteriophages, dangerous viruses acting incognito or underestimated saviors in the fight against bacteria. So see, this is 2024, right? These are still going like, are these even what they say they are? It says a specific issue is the problem of bacterial infections of the gastrointestinal tract. Although phage therapy may be effective in the eradication of the infectious bacteria, so sort of like, chemotherapy. Well, sure as hell kills the cancer, but what else does it kill? What else does it do in your body, right? And it says the question arises as to whether significant changes in the composition of the gut microbiota, which is wildly important. The people are only finding that more out today. We should have known a long time ago. The question arises as to whether significant changes in the composition of the gut microbiota can be recognized as an adverse effect that can induce long-term negative consequences for you. Phage therapy still raises a lot of ambiguities and concerns, especially because of the need to look for alternatives in fighting infections with antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria. So more than one scientist is pointing this out, that this seems to be a forced direction because of a problem that you created. It is crucial to assess whether bacteriophages are our allies, or as they possibly phrase as they pose as a possibility, or Trojan horses that can stimulate the immune system in an uncontrolled way. Damn it, guys, that's exactly what we went through during COVID-19. Immunocompromised, immunosuppressed, and it was all of which was happening based on the way your body reacted to the dangerous things they were putting in it. And it says, or disrupt the functioning of the nervous system and modify the composition of the intestinal microbiota. Sure sounds important to me. They suggested that phage therapy is generally safe and well tolerated. That's what you get from most of these main studies. It says, however, due to the lack of sufficient data, the negative effects of bacteriophage interactions with the eukaryotic cells, it cannot be unequivocally ruled out, especially as there are references indicating that phages may stimulate the human immune system in ways that are not fully understood so far. And from what I can tell, most of the reference points to whether it's generally safe go back before these kind of studies. It's 2024. Now it says many studies on phage therapy focused on its effectiveness. And this is just like the shots, right? Does it do the thing? Yes. There's different than, is it safe for you? And then usually you go retroactively find out that it didn't even do the thing, not the way they said it did. But it goes on to say the studies focused on its effectiveness, sometimes marginalizing aspects of the safety, pretty common, or potential interactions with mammalian immune systems. That seems to be the focal point, which can be negative with long-term use. Is this the new way to have people just perpetually sick? In this regard, not only the route of administration, but also the location of the infection, which determines the potential direction of bacteriophage propagation to adjust tissues, organs, can be crucial. Meaning simply as well, on top of all of it, that the personalized element of this, and that's actually, I didn't go into it in depth in this. I found 4 or 5 different studies that talked about the improper application, that simply doing this slightly askew can cause terrible problems, but they argue we know what we're doing. Well, we've heard that before. And it says ratio of phage particles to bacterial cells, multiplicity of infection, MOU, or MOI, excuse me. It says to use the use of phage preparations with a high multiplicity of infection raises questions about the potential loss of efficacy with repeated use in short intervals due to production of antiphage antibodies. That stood out. And about the unpredictable effects of possible interactions with your eukaryotic cells. Antiphage antibodies? Guys, we're right back in the swing of this. And that's the antibody-dependent enhancement or variations therein about your body reacting. If you're producing antiphage antibodies, well, that means when you put this in your body, you'll end up attacking yourself. If it ends up becoming something like where you're talking about viruses infecting bacteria, and you have naturally occurring phages in your body. So if this somehow recognizes antiphage antibodies, or rather the phage itself as the problem and produces antiphage antibodies, well, it'll attack natural parts of your body that it recognizes as the same thing. It's exactly what we saw during COVID. When analyzing the safety issues of phage therapy, it is also worth asking the fundamental question of why the immune system does not treat bacteriophages as classic, potentially dangerous viruses. It is estimated that more than 31 billion bacteriophages undergo transcytosis from the intestine to different areas of the organism every day. In addition to being commonly found in the gut, bacteriophages have been confirmed in saliva, urine, and peripheral blood, and have also been shown to propagate to various internal organs. Because bacteriophages and their products are non-self antigens, the immune system is able to recognize and react in that way. Theoretically, reduces the benefits of bacteriophage therapy. Meaning that in and of itself, the body reacting the way it normally does would reduce what you claim is the benefit. But my thought is that if it's naturally in your body already, it seems very obvious the body could then create, like it just said, anti-phage antibodies, which then seems like it would start attacking you, your body, your gut. As somebody's pointing out, IG4 class switch. And there's so many different, like I was talking about the interleukin 10. And what was that? Anyway, there's all these different connections to these different parts from COVID that stood out. That just, it feels too weirdly close to me that these things seem to be like almost deliberately, like it could be that these things are chosen for that connective point, or it could be ultimately that we're talking about the direction that is the same, right? Like they're trying to tool with the same types of things that end up in the same direction. But it's just so weird to me how much of this stands out as similar to what we just went through. But continuing, it says, where was I? In addition to the being commonly found in the gut, it says that because bacteriophages and their products are non-self antigens, the presence of antibodies neutralizing the bacteriophage T4 hosted by E. coli were found in more than 80% of investigated persons, despite the fact that they had never received phage therapy, which means that this is either something that's been done or naturally occurring. Either way, it seems to create a problem where your body starts to attack itself in that case. In the case of some phages, we may be dealing with the creation of special conditions in which the immune response is weakened, directly translating into the virulence of the bacteria and their viability. So in effect, creating the exact opposite of what it was done to do. But my point would be that just anything that seems to weaken your immune system seems to always be the focal point. Nevertheless, the fact that bacteriophages are able to exert a direct effect on the mammalian immune system cannot be denied. That seems pretty clear. The effect is anti-inflammatory and includes the impact on innate immunity via the modulation of the cytokine response, as well as adaptive immunity through antibody production. And lastly, I think it says, as the organism's response to viral infections is hormonally modulated, including a gender factor in this type of analysis may be crucial indeed. I just found that interesting. Seeing as how you're at a time when people are pretending like there's no difference, but ultimately this may scientifically force them to acknowledge a difference, to acknowledge what their body's natural makeup is. It says, as is evident from the above mentioned examples, the question of assessing the safety of phage therapy is normally functioning animal or human organisms, especially during bacterial infection, is not easy. The problem is even more complicated when the organism is weakened by a severe and or aggravating chronic disease. Oh, there's more here. Let's see. So it says social and economic life has recently come to a standstill as a result of COVID-19, they write in this article. It was suggested that the special weapon in fight against both problems may be bacteriophages. So even they are connecting this with the COVID-19 experience. And it says the possibility for the use of modified bacteriophages through the phage display technique to produce specific antibodies against SARS-CoV-2 should not be overlooked. Seems relevant. Protecting the organism from the fatal consequences of a heightened immune response, especially the huge overproduction of cytokines. Well, I just read in this and other studies that this very thing could in fact cause that itself. So it seems like an odd thing to include, but it says, importantly, bacteriophages are also present in the central nervous system as a result of their ability to penetrate the blood-brain barrier. There's correlating things here that align with whatever they're trying to accomplish, in my opinion. This raises the crucial question of whether this is a beneficial phenomenon or a serious cause for concern. Well, gee, I guess we'll just flip the coin and find out, huh? However, it says it is still not clear whether the changes in the composition and abundance of bacterial species, as well as the parameters of bacteriophages occurring in the gut, are the cause of the effect of various diseases. Basically, I mean, it just seems clear that this is something that we don't fully understand. That's the main part. Despite a great deal of research into their biology, concluding remarks, mechanisms of action, and potential interactions with the eukaryotic cells, bacteriophages still seem to hold many secrets. The roles of bacteriophages in neurodegenerative diseases, cancers, or metabolic disorders are still unclear. That seems a bit insane to me. the roles they play in very serious diseases as you're about to put these things in our bodies. It says, and even the determination if their effects are beneficial or destructive remains to be performed. Now, to be clear, you have things that are naturally occurring, but what I'm talking about is the bacteriophage system, where you're talking about viruses infecting bacteria and then using those in your body to treat certain issues. That's what this is about. And if we don't know how these things connect with neurodegenerative diseases and cancer, why would we be taking that chance? The safety of bacteriophage and treatment of diseases caused by multi-drug resistant bacteria. This one goes really deep into the idea, while phage therapy has generally been determined to be safe and tolerable among animals, the current research on phage safety monitoring lacks sufficient and consistent data. See how that works? It's been safe and tolerable, except the data doesn't give you enough to make case of that. It's sort of like Flock saying it does all these things, and then you look and the data doesn't back that up. Well, there you go. So what they do. The reality of this study shows you that the current research does not demonstrate the data that suggests that they claim it's safe and tolerable. I find that very alarming. Now, if this is a major safety concern, is the disruption of the body's microbiome. That's huge, which is a key regulator of human health. Another concern is the impact of phage on the immune system, which it may ultimately lead to chronic inflammation and other immune reactions. It is crucial to consider the potential risk of endotoxin contamination that could trigger the inflammatory cytokine response, like I just said. But yes, take it to save off the cytokine response during COVID-19. It says the use of contemporate phages may produce bacterial lysogens that are resistant to the same phage type, potentially increasing their virulence. A few studies have reported transient adverse events or side effects during phage therapy, which include inflammation, flushing, hypotension, fever, the absence of standard protocol to evaluate the safe usage, like I was pointing out, and preparation result in the lack of consistent, complete, and reliable data to conclude safety. That feels like we're being played, doesn't it? Like we don't know, but we're going to pretend we do because it makes money. You can decide. This one, discussing exploring the risks of phage application in the environment. Now, just to quickly state this, there's so much I could read into this. I found this interesting. They're using phage bacteria systems in the environment for food and different things. And it turns out what they talk about is horizontal gene flow through the process of transduction. It says, given that phages facilitate horizontal gene flow. Now, what does that mean in the context of our bodies? Well, right now we're talking about in like food and the environment. And it says the different effects, we must be aware of the potential dangers of phage-mediated horizontal gene transfer among pathogenic and non-pathogenic bacterial species. So it's just the environment. Oh, and then the next one really overlaps with I'm trying to rush through these. There was this one. Yeah, the food chain. So this one is novel biocontrol methods, biofilms, and food production facilities. And it says bacteriophages have been used in medical treatment for many years for their ability to infect and lyse-specific bacteria. It says endolysins and hydrolytic enzymes of bacteriophages responsible for breaking the cell wall of gram-positive bacteria are being explored as a biocontrol method for food preservation and in nanotechnology and medical applications. 2018. So jump forward, 2025. Risk profile of bacteriophages in food chain. And it says, phages are considered effective biocontrol agents for improving food safety due to the specific interactions with pathogens. It is essential to recognize that zero risk does not exist. And as biological agents, phages can be continuously evaluated for potential adverse effects on human health in both food and clinical contexts. Must be, they said. This is the first bacteriophage risk profile performed. Hold the phone. It's 2025 in this study. June. It was a year ago. And it's been for years used in the environment, and it's been used in studies for medical. This is the first bacteriophage risk profile performed according to the methodology. Okay, well, that makes me feel better. Key safety concerns regarding phage use in the food sector include the risk of horizontal gene transfer, especially regarding antibiotic-resistant genes among bacteria. So it says, despite numerous studies affirming the safety of and efficacy of phages in the food chain, continuous monitoring remains crucial. In particular, the responses of susceptible populations to phage exposure should be carefully examined. I bring this stuff to you guys. I mean, to me, seems like there's plenty to be concerned about here. But of course, as Luke Rudowski does for us, the AI will take us all out. Well done. Well, just to kind of end on that point, to compare all the work we just did with that, and I'm sure you guys can work out the new media, whatever else you want to put these people in. This just happened to pop up in my feed. And so I feel like it's relevant to go, wow, great work there. So Futurism also includes an article here that I wanted to highlight that I think is connected. Now, very different. Not even the same topic. But before we finish with a couple points on Iran, I wanted to include this because I'm actually kind of blown away that this isn't even being talked about very much. August 3rd, 2026. The reason I want to highlight it is the use, kind of negligence, incompetence of people in power. It appears that the U.S. military accidentally killed everybody on board a civilian medevac flight in New Mexico. Now, you tell me why this is not wildly breaking news covering. I mean, it's insane because it's actually crazier than it sounds. And this is from Futurism a few days ago. When the Federal Aviation Administration, under Donald Trump's administration, under the U.S. government, shut down air traffic to El Paso Airport earlier this year, nobody could have guessed that an experimental high-energy laser weapon was the cause. After days of chaos and speculation, it was revealed that Customs and Border Patrol officials, of course it was them, ICE most likely involved, I can only imagine, fired off a laser volley from a U.S. Army base adjacent to El Paso. It's probably Kash Patel, or them just having, I'm kind of joking, but that's what I get from this. Like, they were just out there messing around with stuff but it says, though the trigger-happy Border Patrol grunts evidently thought they were firing at drug smuggling drones, or they made that story up, or they actually didn't know any better and shot it because about knowing what was going on. All of it makes sense to me. Their real target turned out to be a kid's party balloon. Regardless, it was later reported that the cutting-edge weapon was taken for a test drive. A week before, FAA and Pentagon officials had a chance to discuss how to safely implement the laser device. This is what it looks like to be run by what's currently going on. Think about how serious and crazy that is. And they were like, let's shoot this thing off and see what happens. Like, that's insane to me. And again, the point is they didn't even understand how to operate this thing, and they shot it and could have killed somebody, and it was a child's party balloon. Making it a small miracle that nobody was killed in the air. Now, that's the first part. Secondarily, new bombshell reporting by Wired reveals an incident in which the testing of an experimental GPS jammer resulted in a medical plane crashing into the side of a mountain. The horrifying incident happened in May. The publication reports when a small twin-engine medevac aircraft carrying 2 pilots and 2 medical workers departed from Roswell, New Mexico, heading west for a small mountain village. The crew became the victim of an electronic warfare exercise being conducted at the nearby White Sands Missile Range, a test which rendered their navigational system inoperable. Due to a combination of low visibility and air traffic control that was stretched far beyond capacity, at least 3 other planes reported navigation disruptions due to the GPS jamming. The pilots failed to register the mountain's formation between their plane and landing strip. Unfortunately, their disoriented crew ran straight into the side of the mountain they likely never saw, resulting in the loss of every life on board. Civilian plane. Now, this is a story that's been talked about. What I think is crazy, first of all, is the idea that shooting off a laser beam, just the idea of what that shows you, the lack, like the not incompetence, but the juvenile nature. That's not even the right word. Like, the fact that they would do that. There's a word for that. I can't think of it. But on top of that, the idea of being so reckless with this test that you end up killing Americans flying in a plane. Nobody seems to really care about that. I mean, it just shows you where we are, guys. Now, think about whether or not they're concerned with testing out some new potentially life-ending virus bacteria dynamic or gain of function or vaccines or whatever else we're talking about. Like, this is the kind of people, these are the kind of people that we have in power. That speaks for itself. And of course, you might have seen this, and you already know because we talked about this at the time. Dave DeCamp talked about it this time. 2025, Yemen. U.S. massacres civilian workers and paramedics in attack on Yemen. The reason it's coming back up today? Because it's going back around. Documents and sources indicate that U.S. airstrikes in Yemen last year, because it's only just now being verified somehow, even though we proved it then, and so did Dave, that last year killed or wounded hundreds of civilians. The Pentagon has not publicly acknowledged the reported casualties or provided Congress with a full accounting. Nobody, the guys, they're just murdering people everywhere in the world, and nobody seems to care to stop them. And on that note, to do this quickly, because I read that longer than I wanted to, but that's interesting, isn't it? It's sort of hot in here. Iran says close to Hormuz plan with Oman, but reopening depends on the U.S. Simple enough. Simply means that Iran and Oman have agreed to a route for the ships, which, funny how we've been telling you that since April, right? Because, and I wouldn't say at the beginning, I wasn't saying I knew that. I was saying that's what Iran is saying. That's what Oman is saying. They're talking about the future, and what Trump says makes no sense with that, right? And so we wondered, we questioned, and more than once he would round about his lies, and it kept becoming more clear. And at this point, then it got to the point where Iran was saying that. I was okay, well, that seems like it's obviously happening. What's the alternative? They're making all this up, but they consistently get shown to be right. And so at the end of the day, after this last little spur, and Trump pretended like we were now dealing with them again. They begged me to come to a deal. I said, that's just not true. He's not talking to them. They're not even engaging. And Iran made that clear. Here they are talking with Oman. And then you got Trump and Rubio on the side going, we're in the middle of negotiations. Everyone's laughing at them. That's how stupid this is. Now they've agreed to their route, which is the same route they were already using, the same route that Trump signed on an MOU, and the same route that Trump has been forcing ships to ignore and Iran firing on them, but not sinking them in order to shut them back from crossing the wrong way. Then Trump would go, they're firing, and they broke the MOU. It's just laughable. It says the agreement would be a step towards reopening the key energy route, but official sources briefing Iran media stressed that it still hinges on whether Donald Trump and the U.S. government decide to let it happen. Because the truth is, even though they're completely failing in all of this and don't have the ability to actually take what they want, they could just sit there with their military ships in the water and effectively stop anybody, which, by the way, has been pretty much what's been holding this up the entire time. Iran has exercised a de facto control of the waterway and threatened any vessels transiting like they have from, they said that's the route agreed upon. If you go that route, then we're going to stop you. They're not bombing and sinking ships. They're simply not restraint, but, what's the word I'm looking for? Just firing on them to get them to turn around without sinking the ship. I don't know why I can't think of the word. President Donald Trump has repeatedly insisted Tehran is keen for a deal, but Iran has denied this as of today, and said it will instead make arrangements with its neighbors on the Strait of Oman. So think about how embarrassing this is for him, that even right to today, they're going like, Trump is not even involved. And they said it yesterday, they said it before. So that's the reality of that. And Trump today, the Strait is sort of open right now. That's doom. Bah. It's like, that's just embarrassing. This is not hard to see, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'll just skip this, but the bottom line is Trump was asked very clearly. I mean, I'll just play it really quickly. Might as well. So this is the last thing and we'll be done.
At least the fifth time you've turned off airstrikes against Iran since April.
This is what just recently when he stopped him at the last second. It was going to be worse than World War II. Who knows what they were going to do? The point is that he stopped and the whole plane acted like they were dealing, and Iran was the one saying, we're dealing with Oman and you're not involved. So somebody called him out and said, well, you've done this like 5 times. Like, what was different this time?
To negotiate, what is your message to the American people who are wondering what has changed this time? Why should it be any different?
Well, you don't know. I don't know. I think we're going to maybe get something, but I want to give him every...
By the way, so his answer was, I don't know, kind of, we're going to get something. Because from here on, it goes into something different.
Last chance before decapitation. Very tough to do what we have planned, still planned.
So decapitation, like just horrible bombing that kills lots of civilians and whatever else. So reality being that what he said is nothing. And the answer is, well, we want to give him every possible chance before we do the thing. But every single time you have this response, you tell us that nothing, they're making a deal, they're begging me for a deal. No, they're not. We're going to bomb them. We're begging me for a deal. No. So there's no moving of the needle. So it's not like we need some kind of, what would one more step do? That's why the question was there. The point of the post was like, Trump has nothing to say.
Mr. President, this is at least the fifth this time. Why should it be any different?
Well, you don't know. I don't know. I think we're going to.
You don't know. I don't know. I think we're going to get something. That's actually his answer. You don't know. I don't know. Maybe we'll get something. I can't even believe that.
Maybe get something, but I want to give him every last chance before decapitation. Very tough to do.
Love about that, who are desperate to support him, is they want to frame that as the ambivalent, the benevolent Trump who just reluctantly doesn't want to kill them. You know, you mean aside from bombing innocent people the entire time? It's just silly what people will believe.
Do what we have planned, still planned. We'll see what happens. But it's a very, very tough thing to do. I think I'm very proud of the fact that I'll give people a chance. This is a big.
Oh, he gives himself credit. How unique for Trump to turn it about himself. How rare. Asked a question about something else and he goes, I'm great. What I did was good. I'm the best one. He's just so it's like it's a tick for him.
Move. To do an attack that big on a country, I'd rather not do it. Now, we've already through lots of large attacks, but they would.
Funny there is now he competed with his own ego right there. Oh, wait, but I did do a lot. It was big. So now I'm going to counterbalance that with, but I did do a lot. It was very big. You get what I'm saying? You know, like we didn't want to do a lot, but we did a lot though. It's like two people in his mind that it's like, well, I can't pretend like I didn't do a lot because that would make me look weak. my impression, but I think it's very spot on.
Normal large. Hopefully they'll come to their senses because what happened, you know.
Okay, but wait a minute. Come to their senses. Didn't you just say they were begging you for a deal? That doesn't make sense.
Cannot have a nuclear weapon, but hopefully they'll come to their senses. So they called me and they said, please don't attack. We'll make it.
Okay, but what do you mean? If that means they came to their senses though, right? So if they want a deal, then they came to their senses. But right now you're saying you hope they come to their senses. You see how dumb this is? Like they don't think this through. Like there's nobody walking through this with them going, whoa, that's just stupid, Trump. No one's going to buy that. I don't know where is this supposed like, you know, team of people that make sure he's not looking bad and wear the right clothes. And you know what we've always pretended this is. I don't know.
Deal. That's the real truth. And everyone knows
the truth, but the real truth.
And who wouldn't call? And they found out through leaks and sleazebags, you know, a lot of sleazebags, leakers. Leakers should be put in.
Yeah, now he just drifts off into his own little train of nonsensical thought. But that's how stupid this is. Like, that's where we are with this. As Patrick Kennington makes fun of him, the whole taco, Trump always chickens out. Even with that acronym, he clearly continues to do it. Now, the U.S., as Reuters reports on the 4th, has used, quote, virtually all of its long-range precision missiles during Iran war. Inside sources say. Of course, then Trump comes out and says, how dare you leak that information? It's false. Well, then why would you care? You know, like Trump warns the U.S. has massive amounts of munitions and vows to hunt down leakers after. Okay, I guess we'll find out. Now, what happens when we inevitably find out that he absolutely did run out and he's lying about that now? Well, the people that support him will go, it was about a war thing and the narrative. The truth is he does that about the most inane, stupid things. The reflecting pool, and they cut it with a 1,000-yard foot with a sword as long as my house. You know, at the end of the day, no, they lied and he knows it. We know it. Everyone moves on. It's just like, it's just the stupidest. It's almost, why would he lie about that? I mean, even lie once, maybe, but double down and keep lying about it. It's something about who he is. Pentagon draws up new nuclear weapon strategy for war with Russia and China. That's interesting. The Telegraph. Policy shift to prioritize shorter range tactical equipment. I've been telling you for a long time, Donald Trump has been normalizing the tactical nuclear direction. Do you think it's about Russia and China? Maybe. But either way, that could just be a kind of a head fake to get Iran thinking they're going to do that. Who knows? But to finish up in general, Sam Husseini highlights this as what this is probably a major motivating motivation for the attacks on Iran, keeping eyes off Gaza. Israel wipes genocide evidence in Gaza, carting off rubble and remains in hundreds of trucks daily. You know why? Because if allowed people to go through that rubble, they would find nothing but dead bodies of women and children. And so they're quietly digging it out and moving it somewhere else. Well, everyone's looking somewhere else. That's happening right now in Israel, in Gaza, in occupied Palestine. Well, Susan Abdullah points out greater percentage of children killed in Gaza than in Europe's Holocaust. That's a hell of a stat. Look into it for yourself. The scale of Israel's child killing in Gaza is historically extraordinary, indefensible. The Holocaust was 25%, 30 plus. And it's that, guys, that's not it's more than that. That's what we can prove. But yeah, keep telling us why these are the ones fighting the evil in the world. Now, drop site news also includes this. Israeli army chief says in a statement on Thursday that the Israeli military would continue proactive operations in Gaza during the supposed ceasefire. So they're allowed to keep military operations and bombings and killings and rape and torture, but it's all because of Hamas. But wait a minute, the actual ceasefire literally says you're at ceasefire with Hamas. But Hamas, though, I mean, that's not even a joke. Fetterman just went on Jon Stewart's show and asked point blank about when he said it's not a genocide and he said, well, they've killed 1,200 Palestinians just since the ceasefire. And Fetterman says, well, yes, because they need to be taken out. Palestinians? I mean, he makes it about Hamas, but you're talking about innocent Palestinians. We're not talking about Hamas. We're talking about Palestinians who have been bombed. And even if it was, you're still talking about a ceasefire with that group. And now you're okay bombing them during a ceasefire because, well, they're the group we're fighting. You guys are all very obvious about it. If you're a Zionist, apparently, it doesn't matter what you do. But the other side can't do anything. I mean, who's missing this right now? It's obvious. Now, the Board of Peace has issued its first construction contract in Gaza to build a rudimentary 150-person military outpost to, get this, guys, house Moroccan troops. It's almost like everything fits together. There's more to the story. Now, it's not like it's all interconnected in that way, but just think about how the point is that whatever happened over there was clearly involving the Israeli agenda, the U.S. agenda, and it just so happens that you have Moroccan troops who are building out the first outpost in the occupied Gaza technocratic hellscape. The contract, which has not yet been finalized, was awarded to Arkel International. You know that company. You know why? Because that's the company that worked to bring in the the Gaza Health Humanitarian Foundation. By the way, it's a fake U.S. company that's obviously an Israeli cutout. Arkel International, a contractor for the U.S. government and militaries worldwide, is transporting aid to Gaza for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. You know, the one run by that ISIS guy that Israel supported to make the ISIS militia. Here it is right here. For those that don't remember. Haaretz article. What's wrong with that? How Israel trained and armed ISIS-linked Gazan militia. That's for the Humanitarian Foundation. That's what it was. They called it that. So, this group, it says, Arkel International LLC, a veteran U.S. construction and logistics firm that operates as a subcontractor for this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. No big deal. Arkel International is responsible for the logistics side of the aid distribution operations. You know, the ones that were basically a choke point for murder. According to the company's incorporation papers in Israel, its authorized representative in the country is Hazel Bazaliel, an Israeli businessman who previously brokered defense deals in Africa. It's just normal stuff. It says the company registered in Israel as a foreign corporation on May 13, 2025, a week before the GHF aid distribution centers began operations in Gaza Strip and a day before Safe Reach Solutions registered in Israel. At least one of Arkel's executives has been living in Israel since 2024. At least a month before the company was formally registered in Israel, discussions were already underway regarding its establishment. As previously reported by Haaretz, the Gaza aid operation was initiated by officers of the IDF without the knowledge of broader defense establishment and was coordinated by the Prime Minister's office. According to a source familiar with the project, Arkel was expected initially to contract the distribution sites inside Gaza. To construct, But in the end, the task was carried out by the IDF. Well, explain for me why a group that is involved with why were they building construction site? Because that was what they were going to build it out. This is a cutout, guys. That's what this is. The Arkel's incorporation papers in Israel Hazil Bazalil, a businessman who founded a cellular provider in Israel, brokered defense deals in Africa, and serves as Rwanda's honorary consul in Israel. It's crazy. It listed as the company's representative in Israel. The company has given him power of attorney to manage its business in Israel. It's open and manage a bank account for the company, appoint lawyers and accountants for the company, and to receive legal documentation for the company's name. But it's based out of Louisiana. Trust me. According to an informed source, Bezalel even got approval from the defense ministry before the company was opened in Israel. Currently, the company's main activity is transporting goods from the loading point at Kareem Shalom to the distribution centers. Now, this is back then, right? This was revealed even by Army veterans that came back to the U.S. and testified to this, that these people were murdering Palestinians. Not necessarily the ones bringing the truck, but the dynamic involved was absolutely a choke point for execution. The trucks used by Arco used to belong to the Israeli logistics company, Millennium. No big deal. Photographs obtained by Haaretz from the vicinity of Kareem Shalom show the company's name crudely erased with paint. According to Arkil, the trucks were sold to them by Millennium. Bottom line, guys. Oh, there's one point here. Haaretz has reported widespread chaos at distribution sites where hundreds of Palestinians have been killed on their way to receive the food brought by Arco International. So back to the point. The first company to build this is Arco International, and they're bringing in Moroccan troops. You know, it's almost like it all just kind of falls in place, right? Like this is all somehow interconnected. Lastly, oh wait, make sure I didn't miss that. Oh yeah, we got that. Okay. Lastly, this is Zachary Foster. Meet Yahav Lichner. He's Israeli. He's the director of the Washington, D.C. office at UNICEF, United Nations Children's Fund. He spies on the United Nations on behalf of apartheid Israel, forward confidential UN reports to apartheid Israel diplomats. And they know this because Dropsite News did a breakdown on this for your eyes only, Israel's mole inside the United Nations. Now, it's well worth your read, and it's very clear. And the point is simply that you not only, so we're talking about the UN dynamic and the investigations, or even the, everything we've talked about, and including the collaboration with the United Nations in regard to the Gaza Board of Peace, all of it, is that you have to recognize that the people like this are on the inside of these very institutions that are allegedly supposed to hold them accountable. And that's why this is going the way it's going. The point, obviously, today, guys, is about trying to do something about this, right? Like, we see it. All of this. So we covered a lot of topics today, but it's important to do your best to bring this to the attention of people who otherwise don't know about it, whether they have the influence to stop it, to change it, or not. Definitely, if you can, but anybody, everybody, because one more person seeing this, talking about it, sharing it, can and very might well make the difference. So help us. I'll leave it there for today. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you all. I think one thing, guys, before I leave today, I've expressed this so many times, that just we're in a very important time where this stuff is so, I've been doing this long enough to know to feel sort of the fever pitch, not just from narratives. And it's weird. There's a difference, right? There's a difference between the screaming idiots online that will yell about things that aren't even happening, and then like the fever pitch, which is not even the same. I shouldn't even use the word fever pitch, but just like the kind of like the height of where we are with the agenda, what's actually happening. And I personally feel like we're at a time where I've never seen it as obvious, as forced, and as honestly, as vulnerable. And I think that's just important. I think it's important to capitalize on. So I just want to stress it again on the way out today, that if you ever had a time where you felt like you could make a difference, it's now. I really believe that. And even though it may feel the opposite, and there's a reason for that, because the system does not want you to recognize an opportunity. That'd be the way I see that. Either way, the information is here for you because it's better to be informed. I'll tell you that right now. So thank you for tuning in. I love you all, as always. Question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.